followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Saturday the 12th of August. Today, migrant barge evacuated. Channel migrants housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge have been dramatically moved out after Legionella bacteria was found in its water supply. That's despite the fact the Home Office says no one on board has fallen ill.
And Labour has accused the Tories of making Britain the most exposed major economy to rising energy prices. Data shows the UK had the highest average domestic electricity price even before the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
And the Lionesses will play Colombia in the World Cup quarter-final later today. We'll have all the details later on in the show.
After a pleasant sunny day for many yesterday, what will the weather look like for today? Well, here's Dan Stroud from the Met Office.
It is a weekend of sunny spells and showers, so keep those brollies to hand. To find out exactly where those showers will be, tune in to the latest forecast with me later.
I'm Ellie Costello.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for your company. And there is one story that has really got us going this morning.
Yeah, it's this. It's on the front page of your sensational Soaraway Daily Star, Rise of the Sarnie Psychos. And this is, Ellie, 45% of Brits have what they call weird sandwich combos.
I'm worried about this. What are the combos?
Well, the top of the list is, well, they're saying a baked bean sandwich. So not baked beans on toast, the old favourite, but a sarnie packed full of beans. See, they'd all fall out. That'd be a nightmare to eat.
I don't know. If the beans were hot, I'd be quite up for that. I love a baked bean. And then if you had a nice farmhouse loaf, yeah, OK, I'm on board with that one.
No,
yeah.
But the mechanics of that work, because then the crust will keep the content in.
Yeah.
The crusty bread would
I'm on
work.
board with that one.
Yeah.
Maybe put a fried egg in there.
Some other weird ones.
Yeah.
Tuna and pineapple. See, I like ham and pineapple pizza.
No, Martin.
You don't?
There has to be a line drawn, and that is where the line is.
I like
tuna and pineapple.
Tuna and pineapple, I think, is a step too far. Here's another one I just can't get my head round. Sausage and peanut butter.
Oh, no.
I mean, you'd be chewing that all day.
You would. How would the flavours even combine with that?
And here's another one. Jam and cornflakes. I sort of get that. That's like a breakfast bap.
That I understand. That feels like it's a breakfast thing.
Yeah, a breakfast combo.
Yeah, it feels like breakfast in a sandwich, but yes.
And this one, see, a banana sandwich I used to have quite a lot as a kid, but this one they're saying banana with mayonnaise.
No. Who are these people? Come on. And I want to know, how do you even find these combinations? Are you just stuck one day? Do you just not have a lot in the fridge and you just think, do you know what?
Well, that's one way.
Put banana with mayo.
Because my strange, it's not even strange, but I like a crisp sandwich.
That's fantastic.
But I like it with salad cream. Because when I was a kid, the only stuff we used to have left, you know, when shopping week was over, was crisps and salad cream. As a consequence, I've got a soft spot in my heart for it.
Just crisps and salad cream, no meat?
No, just crisps and salad cream in bread, crunch. And it's like yellow food overload. I still like it to this day, because it reminds me of being my hungriest when I was a kid, and it
hit the spot.
Get a craving.
Really? Oh, yeah. I do like crisps in my sandwich, but generally like a ham and cheese sandwich with some crisps in there.
Well, crisps inside?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
crisp
I get
sandwich.
it.
You know what? Funny story. When I was interrailing, I was about, God, how old was I? About 19. And it was me and one of my best friends. We were interrailing around Europe. And we took crisps and put them in our sandwich, which must be a very British thing to do. And I don't know where we were. It might be somewhere like Slovenia. And these locals came over to us and I went, I'm so sorry, are you putting crisps in your sandwich? I was like, yeah, this is the best thing ever. And they were like, wow,
weird
that's
Brits.
amazing. Weird Brits, but then they were like, we're going to try that. So maybe there's people eating crisp sandwiches in Slovenia because of me.
You're doing your bit for international sandwich relations.
Maybe I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Brits, I think we're all a bit weird when it comes to our sandwiches.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
these people, they take the biscuit.
Yeah, I think, well, maybe a biscuit in a sandwich.
Maybe a biscuit in a sandwich. No, that sounds
Well, let us know what your weird sandwich is.
Yeah, your weird sandwich combination, please. Or your favourite sandwich, even. Mine would be very boring, a very good egg and cress and mayo.
Oh, that's really nice.
That's really boring.
Yeah, that's not,
what would you have?
What was my favourite sandwich?
Favourite sandwich?
I like it so it's like a Scooby snack. So I like ham, turkey, tomato, onion, lettuce, mayonnaise, pickle, mustard. I like it so it's so big you can barely get your gob around it.
Wow. And would you make that for yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
With cucumber as well, salad cream. So it's just so big you can barely get your head around it.
That's a tall order.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
me with just my egg and cress.
That's it.
Do let us know your favourite sandwich combo. And if you're a sandwich psycho, a sarnie psycho, as the Daily Star would describe you as, do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com.
OK, on to more serious matters to our top story this morning, because all migrants housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset have been removed after traces of Legionella bacteria were found in the water supply system on board.
Yes, the Home Office says no one has fallen ill and the evacuation was only a precautionary measure. Residents say they were told they will be moved back to the barge after a week.
Well, joining us now is political commentator Peter Spencer. Good morning, Peter. Top of the morning. It's always a pleasure to see you. What do you make of the latest twist in the farce of the Bibby Stockholm? It's basically the only boat they've managed to stop.
Absolutely, nicely put. I mean, it is just the latest instalment in a catalogue of catastrophe, is it not? And it begs well, a million questions, actually, the first of which is exactly when were the health checks on the water actually initiated and when did the government get the answer? and how come that they had to leave it until they actually got a few people on it before they shipped them off again. But it sort of it fits into this absolute disaster in terms of PR for the government, because it's the icing on the cake, or the something extremely unpleasant in the sarnie, I suppose, to pick up on your earlier conversation. The government decided this was a small boats week. Brilliant idea. Starmer's away, so let's big up how well we've done with it. And we find that what they've actually done is just cocked it up at every possible turn. But behind all this is the question of why is this such a widespread problem? And the answer is that they're getting on for 180,000 people awaiting their claims being processed. And why is it taking so long? And the answer to that is, according to the official inspector, that in the Home Office there are not enough staff. The staff they've got are not properly trained. There's a huge turnover because morale is low. Our colleagues at Sky News have worked out they need to work 3 times as fast to make any serious headway in all this. And I mean, what it boils down to is they can't actually seem to get the staff. Now, just imagine a chief fire officer saying, you know, we'd love to put out all these blazes in people's homes and save their lives and all that stuff, but we just can't get the staff. Does that wash? Answer, no, it does not.
Peter, I mean, this is almost farcical at this point, isn't it? As you said, it's Small Boats Week, and this is something that's meant to stop the boats, and the migrants have barely been on there a week. How does this reflect on the government, do you think? There's one Conservative minister going unnamed in the papers today saying that Suella Braverman, she needs to be sacked.
Well, I mean, I suspect that there is going to be a bit of a groundswell against her because of the fact that at every turn she has called it wrong, and for all the sort of the breathing fire rhetoric, and we have our esteemed colleague Lee Anderson saying if they don't like boats they should F off back to France, which is, I think, is a pretty incendiary remark. It fits with her sort of rather sort of bare knuckle approach to debate, but it actually, I have to say, it does rather lower the entire tone, as well as exposing pandering, if you like, to a certain undercurrent of racism, which there's got to be, and which I'm sure will anger those on the liberal wing of the Conservative Party quite considerably. So Suella Braverman's days as Home Secretary, I mean, she was originally brought in because she was a sort of a handy sort of sop to the right wing of the Tory party, but I suspect she is fast running out of time, and next time there's a reshuffle, I would be anything but amazed if Suella Braverman gets the call from number 10 to say bye.
You know, Peter, there are accusations that Genric, of course, was on his jolly in Turkey, giving 3 million quid to the Turks to try and clamp down on the manufacture of boats. He was away. As you say, there's the work from home culture being blamed because there weren't enough civil servants keeping an eye on the ball in the office. And then there's talk about, were the unions politically motivated? The fire unions on the fire report, and then the health and safety people, Legionnaires. I've been in an office block that had Legionnaires before. All we do is turn the taps on and flush it out. It's not actually fatal. No one was infected. Does any of that matter anymore? Or is this boiling down to the fact that whatever they try, the 100,000 mark has been reached illegally this week? They can blame the ECHR, they can blame Turkey, they can blame Keir Starmer, they can blame the charity, they can blame anybody they want. But this has been a calamitous, systemic failure.
Precisely. And I mean, sort of, and then you sort of go back. I mean, the Prime Minister has known from the outset, I would like to hope, because he's an assiduous kind of guy, that there are systemic problems within the asylum processing system. And you can't help but wonder whether it was a bit of an unwise call on his part to include stopping the boats as one of his key priorities. I mean, you don't have to big things up. I mean, there's also, you could big up people eating weird sandwiches, if you like, and everyone will start talking about weird sandwiches, as indeed you lovely people have been earlier on this morning. But once you get people going on a subject, then obviously you need to get it right. I mean, you know, you look at sort of everyone's been talking about Barbie just lately because there's been the Barbie film and the product's been around for 50 years. But once you set the ball rolling, it's pretty hard to stop it. And so if the Prime Minister has simply not gone big on small boats in the first place, we wouldn't be hearing so much about it, and the government would not be so utterly exposed as it is to the charge of complete, utter, and abject incompetence.
Okay, Peter Spencer, thank you as ever for joining us. Talking about Barbie, looking very pretty in pink yourself there this morning in Cornwall. As always, your trademark backdrop. Peter Spencer, thank you very much for joining us this morning on GB News Breakfast.
Thank you very much. What do you make of the Bibi Stockholm and the latest twist?
Well, I've always felt it's a solution to something that we don't need. It shames us as a nation that it's even there. Nobody wants it, no matter what side of the divide you sit on.
True.
And the fact we can't even organise a what's it in a brewery, I think just brings us it just makes the country seem tin pot.
Yeah.
It really does. And 750 arrived on Thursday illegally, probably another few hundred yesterday. That's 2 barges in 2 days. I mean, it just isn't workable.
Well, it just makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, where do we actually go from here? You would need hundreds and hundreds, potentially thousands of these sorts of barges if you actually wanted to move migrants and asylum seekers out of hotels. And clearly,
but then
currently we can't house them in one.
That's right. And what's been really interesting about this is when you look into the fact that Bibi Stockholm has been successfully used to house asylum seekers in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, in Germany, oil workers in the Shetlands, and very similar craft were used to house squaddies during the Falklands War, in Port Stanley, as it was called then. And there was no problem. And suddenly we have a calamity when it's on our shores and when it's asylum seekers here. It just feels like we've shot ourselves in the foot at every juncture.
And I want to know a little bit more about how this actually happened. I mean, was the water system not checked before these people were moved on board? I feel like that would be one of the first things you look into.
So I know a bit about Legionnaire's disease, as I said, because I was in an office block, a very posh office block in Mayfair that had it diagnosed in the water system. It comes in if the water isn't used.
Yes.
So if the water sits, it's not stagnant, but if it sits, it can develop. All you have to do is flush the system out and it goes. And nobody fell ill here. So is it much ado about nothing? Is it the excuse they were looking for to close down the boat? Is it health and safety gone mad? Or was it a necessary precaution? Whatever it was, it shot this in the foot.
Well, let us know what you make of that story. You will certainly have an opinion at home. gbviews@gbnews.com.
OK, moving on. Labour has accused the Conservatives of leaving the UK the most exposed major economy to rising energy prices.
Well, it comes as data from the International Energy Agency showed that Britain had the highest average domestic electricity price of any country assessed by the global body.
Let's get more analysis now from the Director of Export Unlocked, Richard Bartlett, joining us this morning. Hello to you, Richard. So another day, another attack from the Labour Party on the Tories, this time on energy. Can you give us some details about precisely why Britain is so exposed to high prices when it comes to energy?
Good morning, Ellie and Martin. On a sunny morning, as it's just coming out. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot over the last year with GB News and gone through a lot of different areas. We're very exposed because we are a net importer of lots of things. We don't have a lot of usable things ourselves. The government's trying to work on that over a period of time and give us some figures there. Obviously, Labour found a leap there to say that the UK are very exposed. We know we're exposed. One of my concerns, and I'm sure it's a concern for yourselves, sat there, is how that affects the consumer going forward. We've had high prices and they don't seem to be coming down, and that's a really big concern, particularly here in the UK. And it worries you now that we're coming into August, September. We're seeing huge prices in everything. We've talked about supply chain on all different areas, and it just seems that the government just seem inept to just reach out and just talk to people and explain what they're trying to achieve. We see lots of snippets about they're going to do this, they're going to do that, but what does it actually mean to the cost where people now are really struggling to pay the bills?
What is the likelihood, Richard, do you think, that these prices will start to come down? As you say, winter is on the horizon. People will start to feel anxious now about those temperatures dropping in their homes. They will remember last winter and how difficult it was for so many families up and down the country. Is there any hope on the horizon in terms of the bills coming down?
Well, I've been looking at this, and as you know, I've been doing a lot of research on this. We're not going to see a big drop. I mean, I don't know if you get. I mean, I get mine direct debit, and it comes in every month, and I'm not seeing any reduction there. It's still the same price. It's still going out. But it's the most vulnerable, as we know. This is where the concern is, and how's that going to affect? We're already seeing huge increases in prices all over, in everything to do with food, everything, oil, everything, petrol. And this is just another thing, but people need to heat their homes, and it is a real concern. We don't see a big reduction. We think that'll go into 2024. So we've got another year of this. And as we all know, with anything that tends to go up, it takes a long time to come down. It never seems to come down as quick as it kind of went up. And that's the worry. And it's interesting to see the forecast and what we're expecting. We're not going to see much change going into 2024, no matter what the government says here. We're not going to see a huge change. So that's the concern going forward.
OK, don't you think it's fair to say it's a bit rich of the Labour Party, Richard, to have a pop at the Tories when effectively they don't have a way out of this problem either? For example, you're quite right, we are a net importer, particularly of gas. 95% of us rely on gas boilers, and yet we import like 50% of all of our gas, which seems crazy when you think we have the North Sea, which Keir Starmer wants to stop. And when you look at the numbers, a 312% increase in importing gas, 20 billion quid's worth in 2021. Most of that comes from Norway, which, by the way, happens to get most of its gas from the same oil field we do in the North Sea. So in terms of ways out of this, energy sovereignty should be the way forward, being self-sufficient. Yet the Labour Party has said no more licences in the North Sea. So aren't they just guilty of the same crime as the Conservatives?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree totally, Martin. And this is why I didn't want to go too deep into this, because, Labour are coming out with all these, and it's just fighting in between two parties. But actually, what you're going to do, we're an island on our own. We had Brexit. We've decided to leave the European Union. We're going to be self-sufficient. We're not seeing that in your earlier story about, we've got immigrants and migrants coming into the UK. We don't seem to be able to do anything going forward. We should be able to do our own energy. We should be able to start now planning and be very clear with people within the UK. This is the plan, and Labour not clear. They've said they're going to do this, they're going to do that, but actually what they actually physically going to do, because energy is going to go up and up and up, and we get to a stage where it becomes a luxury, and only the luxury who are going to afford it are the people who can afford it, and the vulnerable are going to be more vulnerable. So we're going to have more illnesses, more NHS pressure, because obviously people are not having the heating on, elderly suffering. It's a real concern. I've got an 89-year-old mother who watches news and looks at energy all the time and worries about them energy bills. And she's one of the few. She's lucky she's got people like me. You imagine people who are vulnerable on their own. So, yeah, they've got to be very clear with this, Martin. Get a plan going forward, and just be very clear. We've not seen anything in all the news that we've done in the supply chain with the GB News in the last year and a half. We're not seeing any kind of resolvement of anything that we've talked about over the last year and a half. So it does worry you, doesn't it?
Yeah. Richard Bartlett, really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Such a concern, really, isn't it, coming into winter? Just seeing those bills, they're not coming down anytime soon, as Richard just pointed out.
And I think it boils down to the same thing as the Bibby stock loan. It just seems that there's a complete lack of forward planning. There's a complete lack of joined-up thinking and dogma controlling the reality. For example, we need a balanced energy portfolio. We need to be self-sufficient, so we're not reliant on these expensive imports. We're buying at the top of a market. When there's a war, as a consequence, we're all getting kind of shafted. And, I just don't think it's on for political parties to blame each other. We need to just put all that to one side and have a strategy in place that means lower bills for consumers.
Yeah, well, do let us know what you think of that. Should we be exploiting our resources in the North Sea, as the Tories would like, with those 100 new licences? Should we be investing in green energy? Should we be totally self-sufficient? Do let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, let's have a look at the weather for you.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Dan Stroud and this is your latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. So this weekend, it's a weekend of sunny spells and blustery showers, all courtesy of this area of low pressure to the west. And that will be driving in bands of showers in off of the west during the course of Saturday. And some of these showers become locally heavy and potentially thundery in places. Further to the south and east, staying largely dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures generally fairly reasonable for the time of year, about average for mid-August, with highs of 23 or 22 across the south and east, a little bit chillier further north and west. So those showers continue uninterrupted during the course of Saturday evening, but further south and east, drier with some clear skies in the mix. Overnight temperatures dropping into the mid-teen category. Although these temperatures on the screen are the temperatures we're going to see in towns and cities. Step out into the countryside and you can take a degree or so off of these values. So it's a bright start for many on Sunday morning, although those showers continue, or those turning slightly less breezy. So any showers we do see will become increasingly slow moving as we move our way through the day. And temperatures again on Sunday around average for the time of year. Thank you for listening.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, we're talking about the rise of the psycho sarnies at the top of the show. Baked bean sandwich apparently is the kind of fruitiest out there, but Ellie, there's some even weirder people out there.
Yeah, you people are crazy. Keith says his favourite combination is baked beans and banana, combination made in heaven.
See, I'm not feeling that. But listen to this one. Dawson says you can't beat a cheese and mint sauce sarnie. It's banging.
Donna, my favourite sandwich combination is a mashed potato sandwich. The bread must have lashings of butter. The mashed potato must be hot. Don't knock it until you try it, says Donna. Oh, I'm not sure about that. Even texture-wise, lumpy mash.
I actually
white bread.
Actually, that's got merit, that one.
No, Martin.
No, because the mash would melt the butter. It would become an extra buttery. I quite like that.
No, sorry, Johnny, you haven't won me on that one. Tony says sliced pork pie and mustard. I mean, that's not too crazy. That sounds quite good.
On bread, though, maybe there's a step too far.
On buttered brown bread?
Yeah.
Is that a step too far?
Possibly.
How is that a step too far, but mashed potato in a sandwich wasn't?
There's just too much kind of pastry and bread. It'd be too much to chew. But this one here, Michael, this isn't at all weird, actually. Have you ever tried peanut butter and Marmite? Yes, all the time. That's not that strange. That's a great... In fact, you can buy Marmite with peanut butter in it.
Can you?
Yeah, my kids love it. It's great.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Every day's a school day. And Terry says, my favourite sandwich combo is a layer of sauerkraut, followed by lashings of peanut butter with 4 slices of raw bacon covered in tomato sauce.
Raw bacon?
Not sure about that.
This guy's a caveman.
I think Terry might be winding us up this morning. Do keep those views coming in on your weird sandwich combinations and also the other stories that we're talking about today. We're talking about Prince Harry next. Is it time to forgive and forget? You will have an opinion on that one, so do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. Now, the removal of His Royal Highness from Prince Harry's titles is a sign that he has been kicked out of the family's inner circle. That's according to a royal expert.
But today we're asking the big question. Is there a way back for the Duke of Sussex?
Well, we're joined now by Richard Fitzwilliams, who says Prince Harry should not return to the fold, and Duncan Larkham, who hopes there is a way back for him. Good morning to you both. Very, very good to have you both with us. So, Richard, let's start with you then. So, they are a family after all, but you say there is no coming back for Prince Harry. Tell us why.
Well, of course, you'd have to have a remarkably short memory to welcome Prince Harry back in the fold at the moment. I mean, you're quite right. The HRH removed from the website the fact that Meghan had received birthday wishes from the royal family. The fact also that after Spare, they were evicted from Frogmore Cottage. They've no base at the moment in the United Kingdom. But the reason why, you just simply have to look at the facts. They were senior working royals for a remarkably short space of time. And what happened the moment they were forced to step down because they wanted a half-in, half-out arrangement, which the Queen didn't think was practical, and it wasn't, Oprah has done enormous damage to the royal family, and there were the accusations of racism, which 2 years later Harry simply lifted and changed to unconscious bias. The facts are, however, that that was when he was promoting his memoir Spare, and that was damaging. He attacked his father, he attacked his stepmother, and he attacked his brother. Endless harm. So if they're ever to have a chance of returning to some form of relations with the royal family, they'll simply have to show that they can do things that do not involve constant, ceaseless attacks on them. Said in an interview in The Cut last year, I can say whatever I like. Well, that's what they've been doing. They've been finding losing their Spotify contract, and they've been finding also polls in the United States against them, where previously there'd been a tremendous amount of support. I mean, you simply have to look at what they've been doing, and the issue is trust. Would you trust them? Would you say, if you remember the royal family, and hypothetically they were invited back in some form?
Okay. Okay, I need to bring Duncan in at this point. Richard, you're certainly not short of a word on this bright and early Saturday morning. Duncan, this story came about because the list came out yesterday of the roles, the military roles for the royals, and Harry, for all of his faults, did 2 tours of Afghanistan. He has military experience. Of course, he's outside the fold no role for him, and yet the Princess of Wales, Queen Camilla even, with no military experience, are made commodores and in charge of regiments. So it just sort of felt a bit sad to me. And do you think there is a way back, or is he simply just now too much of a black sheep?
Yeah, good morning. I think what Richard says is absolutely right. We know the reasons why Harry's had this fall from grace, and it doesn't seem like really that long ago. Remember that the couple were getting married in front of 2 billion people, and you had Prince Charles, as he was then, walking Meghan down the aisle. So the loss of his military titles was something that Harry was not happy about. I don't know why he thought he could have his cake and eat it, but he did. So, you know, I think Harry is a member of the family, and blood is thicker than water. I think there's always a way back. But as he told Tom Bradbury in his interview, he said that the ball is in the court of the royals. Well, it's not. And as long as Harry keeps thinking that, he's going to keep being an ousted member of the family. It's not down to the royals. They've behaved pretty well with regard to Meghan and Harry.
And Duncan, just on Richard's point about trust, do you think the way back into the royal family for Prince Harry is if he can prove himself to be trusted again?
Yes, and there's a question of how long will that take, because obviously now, even if Prince William wanted to, he couldn't pick up the phone to his brother and have a frank and full conversation and try and clear the air without fear of it being reported or podcasted or whatever by Harry and the family. So that trust has gone. How you regain that trust? Well, he hasn't spoken out and dropped what would become known as these truth bombs. He hasn't done that for some months now. But I think it could take some years, frankly, before there's any chance of that trust returning.
And do you think, Richard, actually the biggest barrier is his missus? Is the only way back, really, is if he gives Meghan the old royal heave-ho?
Well, of course, there's a lot of speculation. Perhaps there always will be about the state of the marriage, but there's absolutely no doubt. I'd say the marriage was pretty rock solid. I would say there's a tremendous amount since they lost the Spotify contract of wondering what they're going to do next. And it's very, very interesting to see Harry, for example, his work for Sentebale, the charity in the suit, to his work for Invictus. Now, these date back many years, and this, of course, was when he was a senior working member of the royal family and precedes his meeting with Meghan and subsequent marriage. It's extraordinary. I just simply cannot imagine Harry and Meghan returning under circumstances whereby anything that they say or do could be news or could be used by them in some television. For example, they're supposed to have a 4-book deal with Random House, and we don't know where that's going. Harry's memoir Spare was very damaging to the royals, but nonetheless, there's still 3 books out there. It could be Meghan's memoir, Harry's 400 pages that he didn't use in Spare, apparently, and it could be something on Harry's childhood, technically. So you could have a change. They've got to prove themselves, prove perhaps that they can do a great deal as philanthropists, perhaps they go into politics, but something practical, something positive that does not involve causing harm to or knocking the royal family, and then perhaps nations, hopefully, and I agree with Duncan, I mean, it's a very, very sad, it's a tragic situation. Then hopefully things might improve.
And Duncan, what do you think the royal family want out of all of this? Do they feel like blood is thicker than water? Would they like to see Harry welcomed back into the fold? Because he once was one of the most popular members of the royal family.
Oh, that's right. I mean, I remember reporting on Prince Harry when he was literally the royal that guys wanted to go and have a beer with and women wanted to go and have a beer and perhaps a bit more with. Nothing could be further from that situation now. What do the royals think of Harry? I mean, I think they're terrified of the way that Harry and Meghan in particular have behaved, and I think they've behaved, the royal family have conducted themselves brilliantly by not rising to the bait and getting involved with tit for tat across the Atlantic. So, you know, for the royals, their strategy has remained the same. I think they're just sitting back, waiting for the next bombshell to hit the floor, which unfortunately seems to happen whenever Harry and Meghan actually need to sign a new deal or make some money out of their royal status.
OK, Richard Fitzwilliams and Duncan Larkham, we're going to have to leave it there. A lively debate. Thanks for your input. And, Richard, you can certainly talk. Well done, Captain. Let us know what you think out there, because yesterday, it has to be said, when we ran this story, there was very, very little sympathy for Prince Harry, former Prince Harry out there, the prince formerly known as Harry, whatever he is now. But I just do feel it's a bit sad that, you know, the military thing was there and he's not a part of it. I still like the guy. For all of his faults, I do.
Yeah, I actually think if he were to put his hands up and I don't think it's going to be now, but if he were to put his hands up and say, look, I've made a mistake, I want to come home, I want to come back to the royal family, I want to do my duty here in the United Kingdom, I think people would welcome him with open arms.
Yeah,
if he could put his hands up and say that was a mistake, I think there's a lot of love there for Prince Harry.
But I do think he would need to leave a certain bit of baggage behind in Hollywood before he was welcomed back. There seems to be huge resistance to them as a couple.
Let us know what you make of that. Is blood thicker than water? Would you like to see Prince Harry back in the royal family, back here in the United Kingdom? Do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com.
And that's all the news and views from Saturday Papers. Up next, this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. And let's take a look, shall we, at today's newspapers. And the Times lead with students to start term in hotels or bunk beds as universities refuse to guarantee accommodation.
Sounds all right to me. Our doctors striking to bring down the government. Well, that's on the front page of the Daily Express, with the Doctors' Union being accused of masterminding a wave of strikes.
Asylum seekers on the barge were removed from the vessel after a potentially deadly bacteria was found in the water system. That's what The Guardian reports on the Bibby Stockholm.
And the Health Secretary is facing pressure to scrap rules that allow patients who identify as women to share female-only hospital wards. The Daily Mail lead with that.
And on the front page of The Eye, a major security breach is being kept from the public after Chinese and Russian hackers break into the UK Foreign Office.
Well, it's time to go through the papers now. Joining us this morning is the journalist and author Susan Holder and the journalist and commentator Ella Whedon. Top of the morning to you both. But before we dive into your stories, can we have a look at this Psycho Sarnie story that we've been leading on this morning? And it's a funny old thing because things get the viewers going, and it's fair to say this one has chimed with a few viewers out there. Just quickly before we go to you guys, I'm not having this. Julian in Coventry, when having a Chinese curry, always have a slice of bread and make a sandwich with the rice and the curry sauce the morning after. Beautiful. No, that's wrong.
No, I think I could get on board with that. Oh. Yeah, I understand that one. Carol says peanut butter and grape jam with crisps.
Well, that's just information overload.
Peanut butter and jam is quite nice. I'm not sure about adding crisps into the combo there. And Brian says cheese spread and crisps, yeah, and peanut butter and strawberry jam. So, Brian, yeah, those aren't too crazy, I think.
At least they're a bit normal. Let's turn to you guys. The high-browed intellectual debate this morning.
Yes.
What's your favourite weird sandwich, Suze?
Well, I don't think it's weird.
Yeah.
I always have my bacon sandwich with brown sauce and marmalade.
Marmalade?
Always.
Marmalade with bacon?
Yeah, well, it's only like kind of, I don't know, like a kind of a chutney sort of thing, but every cafe I go to for breakfast, and I go to a few, they all know that I do that, and they do it all perfectly. And actually, don't knock it till you've tried it, because honestly, I could eat it right now. Bacon, marmalade, brown sauce.
That's the old Sue's special. Ella, what about you?
I don't know. It's a very Irish thing to make everything into a sandwich. So, you know, any dinner can be put between two pieces of bread, I believe. But one we had when we were kids was always, it's not that weird, butter and sugar sandwiches.
Oh, yeah.
My nan used to always make us that.
Sugar sandwiches were a thing, weren't they?
Yeah. I mean, not, you know, obviously you'd probably have your kids taken off you if you gave them to them these days.
Yeah, that'd be a social services job.
But it's very nice.
Yeah, lasagna in 2 slices of white bread is actually really
I think a lot of the time you don't realise you're making a sandwich, but you are at dinner
It's just
time.
like muscle memory.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough. Anyway, on to the intellectual stuff now.
Yes, Susan, let's start with you, shall we? And this story about students to start term in hotels or bunk beds. It's in the Times.
Yeah, as if going to university at the moment wasn't kind of stressful enough for them, and with all the debt they're going to get into, and before they even start studying and everything else, they're being warned that there might not be accommodation. Bristol University is offering accommodation in Wales, which isn't very convenient, and Exeter says that there's 5 applicants for every place. So I'm not sure, it doesn't actually, in the Times, really describe why there is so much problem. But I think part of it is the fact that people can't afford to move out into the private sector. Usually when you go to university, I know from when my son went, you do the first year in the halls and then you tend to move out into the private accommodation. So if the private accommodation starts to dry up, it can be an issue then because they stick in the accommodation that there's the student halls of residence. I know when... It is very important, obviously, that when you're at university that you do actually build that community, that you're near enough to university, that you're with the people that you're studying with. I think that is really important. I know when my son went to university, one of the American students that came to Liverpool to study where he was so far out that the other students took pity on him and said, well, why do you keep disappearing? Why are you not coming for a drink with us? Why are you late in every morning? And when they realised where he was staying, because he'd been put in this accommodation because he'd applied from aboard, they took pity on him, and he actually moved into... illegally, but moved...
Where was he? Leeds?
Well, he was just, like, really in a very dodgy area right on the outskirts of Liverpool, and it just was... He couldn't commute very, very easily. So they took pity on him, and he topped and tailed with another student in his student bed for the whole time.
That could have its benefits.
They actually shared, which I thought was really kind of nice of the person who did that for him, but not really what you want to be doing when you're studying.
I wonder, Ella, if this is just a symptom, basically, of the fact we're just running out of housing stock. I mean, we see if people are trying to rent a house in the northwest, there are 20 people going for every single property now. That's huge overload. Serco have hoovered up quite a lot of the housing stock for asylum seekers. We just don't have enough houses. Is this a symptom of that, or are students being especially hard done by?
Well, I think it's a mix. Obviously, we know that there's a national housing crisis, and in the Times it goes into the detail of the fact that, you know, for example, lots of landlords are requesting that students sign up for a huge number of weeks where, you know, that don't match up with the academic year, and we know lots of, you know, maybe they don't have a job in their first year and they can't afford the rent over the summer, so lots of young people go home. So there's an issue there with housing, but it's also the case that universities have, I remember my own university, Sussex, did this, where they had a huge amount of relatively affordable, at least when I was there, student accommodations. It was like living in bunk beds. We didn't mind. It was good fun, but it was cheap. And they kind of knock all that down and they've built much more expensive stuff. Yeah. And so actually student accommodation is much more expensive. And I think universities are pretty, you know, we know this, that they are, in terms of student intake, pretty greedy. I mean, they take on more than they can actually provide for. So there's a bit of a perfect storm going on here. But the solution is more housing, and also for universities to direct their resources a bit better. And it should be a duty to make sure that, not that you house everyone, but that you at least have enough resources within the local area and links to make it, you know, what 19-year-old or 18-year-old, without the help of their parents, is going to be able to work that out if rents are sky high.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it's a big ask, would you? Ella, let's stay with you, shall we? The front page of the Daily Express. So this is a claim that the doctors' strike, the current doctors' strike, is politically motivated. Tell us a bit more.
This is it's a kind of... Obviously, this is ongoing, but it's a bit of a row happening between Dr. Lawrenson, who is the frontman for the discussions, or at least the media frontman for discussions from the BMA of doctor strikes, who is quoted as saying that, you know, whereas the Scottish government and junior doctors in Scotland have called off strike action because they have agreed to this pay offer with the government, they're ongoing in England, and he said that this is because the difference is with the Scottish Government, there is a basis to work forwards and have a working relationship to negotiate in the future. And Steve Barclay has come back and said, ha, this is proof that you just don't like us, that you're a sort of anti-Tory outfit and you're not willing to negotiate. The Express goes into detail of saying that an example of this is that they're on stage at one of the strikes, on the picket line. Stormzy's song Vossybot was played, which has a line in it which says F the government. I mean, look, the kind of mudslinging like this happens between union leaders and governments. I think it's a bit of a distraction. I think actually, whatever you think of Lawrenson, and there's been a lot of coverage of his private affairs in the media, his, you know, whatever boards he sits on, whether he goes on holiday, and also he's as a lot of young people are, slightly unmeasured in his tone sometimes. But the fundamental issue stands, which is that the junior doctors are saying that they, particularly ones who are starting now in the beginning of their career, saying they're coming in with basically a huge pay cut. The government offers seems to me to be inadequate. And you have, student debts, people who have gone into a certain level of skill who expect us to be able to live a certain kind of lifestyle to support them to do the hard work that they do.
I wonder if this is just yet another unions or a bit lefty shocker. And, you know, the government are looking for a convenient cop-out. But let's move on, if we can, Susan, to something we've been talking about at the top of the show, the ongoing debacle, the farce around the Bibby Stockholm, the only boat they've managed to stop.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the whole thing has just become a bit of an absolute nightmare, and it looks like everything the government is trying just gets kind of torpedoed and sunk. And if you actually torpedoed that, it would probably wouldn't be. Well, I wouldn't be surprised actually. So it's. They've found the Legionnaire bacteria. So obviously the handful of people that they've managed to get on the barge
39
now have to come off it, which is understandable. No one has demonstrated any symptoms as yet, but it could take 16 days for the symptoms to emerge. But also, obviously, the Ascension Island thing has also this week been sunk. So that's been dropped because it's just unworkable on every level, I think. And a £400,000 Home Office drone that was being used to monitor boats in the Channel has also crashed into the sea. So they can't really catch a break, the government, on this. But that's because probably every idea that they're coming up with is particularly stupid. And that's why, funnily enough, they don't work. So I really don't understand why anyone thought this was all a good idea. It seems to me it's putting the cart before the horse. They're not dealing with what they need to deal with, which is the paperwork. That's the main thing that needs to be done, instead of coming up with these grand schemes of barges or Ascension Island. It's all just things that they're coming up with to make it look like they're doing things, and actually, when of course they try and do them, it all falls down and nothing actually happens.
Ella, what do you make of it?
Yeah, well, I agree with Susan in relation to the sort of the paperwork issue, but it's also that these things, the ideas that the government come up with, seem so short-termist. So it's sort of, you know, we've got a problem with housing, as we've just been talking about. We have to house asylum seekers in hotels. That upsets the local community. So we'll just put them in this barge here. You know, rather than saying, should we look at the bigger picture? Should we maybe make some long-term plans to actually have more resources, or make some long-term plans within the asylum-seeking system to look at what we're doing, maybe change it, maybe have some more far-reaching ideas rather than just sticking plasters. And obviously the sticking plasters keep falling off. But the central issue, I mean, there still remains, this is the tension here, there still remains this issue that, British public clearly want there to be control over borders. There's a debate as to whether that's more liberal or more conservative. I'd be on the more liberal side. But control over borders, a sense that things are working, that a system is functioning, And that hasn't been solved, so no one's happy, whatever side of the immigration debate you're on, it seems to be.
It makes you wonder if this was doomed from the outset. I mean, it worked in Holland, it worked in Germany, it works for Shetland Island oil workers. It's the same freight. And it just feels to me like an accident, waiting to be derailed, torpedoed, to quote you, Susan, all along. Anyway, it's one that will roll on and roll on. Thank you very much, Ella Whelan and Susan Holder. We have to leave it there, but see you again in the next hour.
Thank you very much, both of you. Now, the annual summer Perseid meteor shower peaks tonight. Now, if you can stay up, it's the best chance to see one of the night sky's most spectacular light shows.
I'm a bit of a geek on this. I love it. The Royal Observatory of Greenwich in London recommends the best time to catch them is between midnight tonight and 5:30 a.m. on Sunday, one for the night owls.
You might see it when you head into work tomorrow.
I might well do from my taxi window.
Well, there you go. Well, joining us now is space scientist Andy Lound. Good morning to you, Andy. Yeah. Very good to see you, as always. So what could Martin see in the sky tonight and in the early hours of tomorrow morning?
Good morning, both. Yes, this is the exciting period, as always. Yes, go out, look for the darker part of the sky. Unfortunately, if there's street lights and things around, it's going to cause a bit of a problem because it puts that glow in the air. But darker part of the sky, and you'll see shooting stars. Could be between 100 and 200 shooting stars per hour during the peak period, but that's in the darkest part of the sky. So you'll see less than that. You'll see just the brighter ones in areas where the sky is a little bit brighter. And these, of course, are the remains of comet Swift-Tuttle. Has an orbit of about 133 years. And when comets get to the sun, they sublimate. The ice is turned directly from a solid to a gas without a liquid phase. And dust and ice particles come off it, forming the great tail. And that, of course, puts it like a torus around the sun in the position of the orbit of Swift-Tuttle. But there are clumps of this material. And every year at this time, the Earth passes through one of these clumps. And the bits of material then enter the Earth's atmosphere and light up the night sky as these shooting stars.
Present display, Andy, of course, Britain being Britain, we're always dependent on the ruddy weather, aren't we? So these great things are happening and it's always cloudy. Any idea what the outlook's going to be and where the best place in Britain to catch the spectacle is going to be?
That's a good question because we've got speckly cloud at the moment. I mean, last night I was out all night till actually I haven't been really to bed yet, and looking out. But unfortunately, the cloud came and it covered most of it up. So you're just got to keep looking at the weather forecast because it is actually cloud all over the place, and then in some places it's going to suddenly clear. So like everything else, it's hit and miss really, sadly, with these things. I mean, it is worth going out. I mean, bearing in mind in the 1980s, I observed the Perseids from the centre of Birmingham. Bear that in mind, the centre of Birmingham. And yet we actually had a spectacular sight of very bright meteors going right across the sky. So even with light cloud, you can actually sometimes see something illuminating the cloud from behind. So it can be worth going anyway, even if you've got light cloud. But go to the darkest place you possibly can, being safe, of course, and look in the darkest part of the sky. Don't just look towards the constellation Perseus. That's where the tails appear to originate from, but they can be anywhere across the sky.
Oh, it sounds like an absolute treat for the eyes, Andy. Do we need a telescope to see this meteor shower, or is the naked eye good enough?
Yeah, naked eye is good enough. Get yourself a nice chair to lean back in. A deck chair will do fine and lie back. Make sure you've got something to drink to keep yourself going, some nibbles and things like that. That's why it's a great period of time. This is for it. It's one for getting through 3 or 4 hot dogs or something like that. But yes, no naked. It's just a naked eye observation. Just lie back and enjoy the scene. People with cameras, of course, can set their B settings on it and try to capture them going across the sky as well. That's always good fun to play. And this is one of the best astronomical events really for the public because it's something you can actually do. Some astronomical societies, of course, bring telescopes out with them so they can actually do public observing sessions. And if you look it up online to see if your local astronomical society is doing that, because that's well worth doing and you have a lot of fun at the same time.
Yeah, I tend to find as well, Andy, if you have a wee dram of something to keep you warm, then you tend to see stars anyway. So everyone's a winner.
Oh, Andy, we love seeing you. Thank you so much. And thank you for staying up for us as well. Get yourself to bed. You've got stars to see tonight.
To do.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you. I quite like Andy Loud when he's sleep deprived.
Yeah, he's always so enthusiastic about this sort of stuff. He lives and breathes it. What a wonderful geek. And I mean that in the nicest possible sense. Fantastic.
Martin. Anyway,
no, that's good. No, that's
lots in a good way. He means that in a lovely way, if you're still listening, Andy Loud. Lots to look forward to tonight. You can see that in the early hours of the morning.
Yeah, hopefully, hopefully.
Obviously, let us know if you catch it tonight. It should be a really, really good site, gbnews@gbnews.com. But do stay with us because we've got lots more to come, including why don't we spend more on the pothole problem? Potholes, it drives us all mad, doesn't it? We'll be talking about that next. This is GB News.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Dan Stroud and this is your latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. So this weekend, it's a weekend of sunny spells and blustery showers, all courtesy of this area of low pressure to the west. And that will be driving in bands of showers in off of the west during the course of Saturday. And some of these showers become locally heavy and potentially thundery in places. Further to the south and east, staying largely dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures generally fairly reasonable for the time of year, about average for mid-August, with highs of 23 or 22 across the south and east, a little bit chillier further north and west. So those showers continue uninterrupted during the course of Saturday evening, but further south and east, drier with some clear skies in the mix. Overnight temperatures dropping into the mid-teen category. Although these temperatures on the screen are the temperatures we're going to see in towns and cities. Step out into the countryside and you can take a degree or so off of these values. So it's a bright start for many on Sunday morning, although those showers continue, although turning slightly less breezy. So any showers we do see will become increasingly slow moving as we move our way through the day. And temperatures again on Sunday around average for the time of year. Thank you for listening.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Saturday the 12th of August. Today, the migrant barge evacuated. Channel migrants housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge have been dramatically moved out after Legionella bacteria was found in its water supply. That's despite the fact the Home Office says no one on board has fallen ill.
And how is the road? What does the road look like where you are? The latest figure shows the amount of money spent on tackling potholes in the UK has fallen significantly in the last few years. In fact, the budget has been slashed in half from 4 billion to 2 billion.
And the Lionesses will play Colombia in the World Cup quarter-final today. We'll have all the details later on in the show.
And after a pleasant sunny day for many yesterday, what will the weather look like today? Well, here's Dan Stroud from the Met Office with more.
It is a weekend of sunny spells and showers, so keep those brollies to hand. To find out exactly where those showers will be, tune in to the latest forecast with me later.
Good morning to you. I'm Ellie Costello.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
There's one story on the agenda today, and it's not the one you think.
Yeah, and it's this. It's what we're calling, well, the Daily Star is calling Sarnie Psychos. It's the weird combos that Brits like. Baked bean sandwich was the top of the list, and also tuna and pineapple.
Yes, you're all very strange is what we're taking from this. Andrew says, my favourite filling is fish fingers, marmalade, bananas and mustard.
Here's one. Nice. I say Ed in Virginia. So you've gone to America, but you're still saying, I've enjoyed crisps on my sandwich since I was a boy and still do. Ed, I second that emotion.
And I third that motion. Crisps are wonderful in a sandwich.
Yes.
Jeff says fish finger and tartar sauce is his favourite.
That's
pretty normal.
That's
fine.
pretty normal.
We'll allow that.
Lizzie this is the curveball. Try a vanilla ice cream sandwich.
Now that sounds very good.
Now, it'd be a bit
Lizzie,
hard.
I'm going to give that a go. No, I think that'd be lovely if you let it melt a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like a pudding.
I can see
bread
that.
and butter pudding kind of thing.
Actually, I want to try that myself. I bet my kids will love that.
Exactly. Andrew says, I think people are winding us up. Andrew says, my favourite filling is dandelion leaves, sliced radishes, raw onion, cream cheese, and mustard.
And endives. See, I think that could work. It's basically, that's what you call, that's a middle-class salad sandwich, that is.
All
That's
of the
quite a
really
poncy-
strange ones you're on board with.
I think it's quite good.
that?
Yeah, it'd be crunchy. Cream cheese would be soft. The mustard would give it a bit of a tang. Andrew, I think you're on something.
Yeah,
you
you haven't convinced me. And Carol says, I absolutely love mashed potato and salad cream sandwich. Oh, you might be on board with that.
Yeah.
Hot or cold, both delicious. And also, lots of people getting in touch and telling Martin off.
Yeah, so earlier on, we're talking about the Bibby Stockholm and the fact it has Legionella bacteria. I once had an office block in London, a very posh office block in Mayfair, which had Legionella in there, and the landlord told us all you got to do is flush it out by turning on your taps, leave it going half an hour every day, right as rain. Apparently, that's not the way it is. Keith says Legionella really cannot just be flushed out like that. This is a job I did for years. See, my landlord lied. There is always a low content of Legionella in domestic water, so large systems have to be weekly tested and monitored. It produces dangerous levels in stagnant water or large storage tanks, and it is even more dangerous when it's in spray form, such as cooling towers, spray head taps, and showers. So, interesting point that Legionella is always there in small amounts. When the water is stagnant and remains standing, it can amplify. But you've got to give it a good flush out.
Well, what would we do without you, Keith?
It's great.
Because Martin didn't know what he was talking about. And you're going to blame your landlord.
The landlord sold me a porky pie,
Well,
which
he's
should have it in a
blame
sandwich.
the landlord. But, of course, we're talking about this because it is our top story today, isn't it?
It is. So to our top story this morning, this one, all migrants housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset have been removed after traces of Legionella bacteria were found in the water supply system on board the barge.
Yes, the Home Office says no one has fallen ill and the evacuation was only a precautionary measure. More residents say they were told they will be moved back onto the barge after a week.
Well, join us now as political commentator Piers Pottinger. Good morning to you, Piers.
Morning.
Another week, another calamity. 100,000 illegals this week. That was breached. The government are blaming the ECHR. They're throwing £3 million at Turkey. Yet here we are, back in Dorset, and the Bibby Stockholm is the only boat we managed to stop.
Yeah, well, I can't remember quite when it was that Lord Reid said the Home Office was not fit for purpose. But it certainly looks like it this week. It's a shambles. There's no other word to describe it. A total shambles. And it's very embarrassing for the government, particularly for Suella Braverman. I hope she doesn't resign over this. I think it would be the wrong moment to resign. They've got to get out of this, but it's going to take some time. And unfortunately, although we're only talking at the moment about 39 people on this barge, where the issue is far bigger, as you've just mentioned, it's going to be the focal point. And sometimes it's the focal points that bring individual politicians down. The smaller, almost, I daren't say trivial, because it's not trivial, but I mean, it does seem that this was an administrative, bureaucratic screw-up, quite frankly, and politicians are going to pay the price for it.
So, I mean, you're saying you don't want Suella Braverman to resign over this, but there are calls for her to be sacked.
Yes,
Do you think it will come to that? Because, as you say, it's an administrative error. This was simply overlooked, wasn't it? I mean, the water systems should have been looked into before these people were moved
Well, of course, they were looked into, they were. But what happened was there was a delay in the test results getting back. And unfortunately, Mr. Jenrick spoke in public and said they're absolutely safe before those results had come through. So he looks, the immigration minister, Robert Jenrick, he looks very, very foolish now, as does Suella Braverman. But again, I think she's got so much else to sort out. We're waiting for the Supreme Court judgment on the European Convention of Human Rights issue in terms of whether they can send the people to Rwanda. Now, we haven't had that judgment yet. Everyone keeps saying it's imminent, but there doesn't seem to be any sign of it. No. But it would be helpful to have that so one could know one way or the other. And then people would say we've got to come out of the European Convention of Human Rights, which will provoke an enormous uproar. Yeah. And I think it's the last thing the government needs.
It's interesting because they're blaming Jenrick because he took his eye off the ball. Of course, he was in Turkey, giving them £3 million to try and sort the boat building problem at source, the civil service. Are they working from home too much? You know, the bête noire of Jacob Rees-Mogg. Are they in their pyjamas and missing the opportunity? But the book has to stop somewhere. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, this just says time and time again, no matter what the proposed solution, that this is the government that just cannot organise a drink up in a brewery.
Well, I think the problem is the Home Office has such a broad brief. It covers crime, immigration, terror. There's been calls for it to be split in two for many years. And I think something does need to be done because clearly it's not working. And I think it would be better for Suella Braverman to try and sort it out than have to resign over this matter.
Yeah, well, I don't think it would go that far up the food chain, do you? They'll look for somebody to try and to kind of throw under the bus down the line.
Yeah, it'll be a junior official who failed to send the results in the right way or inform the right people. Yeah.
Piers, where do we go from here? Because it seems as though, I mean, we know how big the backlog is of illegal immigrants who want to claim asylum in this country. We need to house them. With £6 million a day being spent on hotels. Well, currently it seems like we can't even make one barge work. And we're going to need hundreds of them, potentially thousands.
Well, yes. I mean, the barge was never going to be the complete solution. It was filling in a gap and trying to get some people out of the hotels. The big question is whether the Rwanda will be allowed to go ahead, or if not, there is whether Plan B, the Ascension Islands, which is at least a British territory, but it would be hugely expensive and take a very long time to put in the infrastructure and get any of these things moving. The thing this government doesn't have is time. They're running out of time. They're also, the Conservative Party, shocking news today, looks like they've lost 16% of their membership. And they've also, incredibly, at the same time, put up the subscription rates. And why on earth they've done that at a time when loyal Conservatives are increasingly disillusioned with this government, who don't seem to be doing anything that I would call conservative.
Here's a question for you, Piers. At the last general election in 2019, I fought in the election. I heard on every doorstep, the Tories simply said, oh, it'll be much worse under Corbyn. Yeah. Will that work with this thorny topic of illegal immigration? Because they keep saying, oh, it'll be much worse under Starmer. You know, he's in bed with the lawyers. Will that wash, or is there just a symptomatic failure now at the heart of the Conservative Party? Or Is this something we just cannot stop and something that we'll have to live with because there are 1 billion people around the world at any one time on the trail looking for a better life and they are choosing Britain because we're a brilliant country? Is this just something we're going to have to get used to?
Well, I think it's not just us, it's everyone. And a key point to me is that Europe is a very big place and France is a much bigger country than the small island of Great Britain. We have much less space, let alone the facilities. And the reason so many illegal immigrants choose us is because we're a soft touch and we give them all the benefits they want and they can live, in their view, a far better lifestyle without actually contributing anything in many cases. And so we are attractive. But I think that the powers that be have to get together and try and look at an international solution because these immigrants come from different places for different reasons, some of them perfectly legitimate, some of them not, some of them actually coming here deliberately to start a life of crime or continue a life of crime. And I think the immigration problem is so big now and so international, it requires real international collaboration and proper long-term thinking, not short-term solutions like this ridiculous barge in Dorset. That was never going to be a key element in fixing the problem.
I mean, but Piers, the context remains that one of those 5 pledges from Rishi Sunak is to stop the small boats, and it does seem, well, ridiculous.
Well,
at this point,
unfortunately, if you make pledges and you set yourself targets, you've got to keep them in politics. And it's a very dangerous thing to do. They've done this and they're not going to make, looks like, any of the pledges the way things are going. And, you know, as I say, they don't have time to fix everything because these solutions are long-term. They're not going to be sorted out in a year or even 2 years. It's not... I mean, I feel sorry for the government. And, I mean, the Labour Party don't have any real solution. Their solution is to give more immigrants visas more easily. And I think that would just encourage more people to come. So I don't see how that solves anything. And I do think Martin's point is right. On the doorstep, I don't think people would trust Keir Starmer to do a better job than Suella Braverman. Far from it. Although I think immigration is not the #1 issue as it has been in the past. I think the #1 issue is the cost of living and then tax. And, I mean, we're very highly taxed as a country now. There are so many taxes that really you do question. And a Conservative government should be a party of low taxes, free market and encouraging economic growth. At the moment, we're not seeing any of that.
Great points well made, Piers Pottinger. It does sometimes feel, I think, to a lot of Conservative voters out there, they voted Tory and they got socialism. Anyhow, let's move on. Thank you very much for that. That was superb.
Thank you very much. Now, new analysis by the Local Government Association has revealed that Britain's spending on fixing potholes has fallen faster than nearly all other major economies.
Yeah, this comes as the cost of bringing pothole-plagued roads in England and Wales up to scratch has been estimated at a staggering 14 billion quid.
Well, here to tell us more about what those cuts mean for the future of our roads is none other than Mark Morell, a.k.a. Mr. Pothole. Good morning to you, Mark. Very good to see you. We remain, don't we, a pothole nation. The roads are in such a poor state. Why is that?
Lack of investment from decades, and you can see with these latest figures that the reduction in investment by successive governments has led to a situation where up until 2019 there was we're only investing 51% of what we should have done compared to 2006. But that's even worse because that 2019 figure doesn't equate to what currently spend is 1.36 billion. And if you include inflation, we're spending 25% of what we were in 2006 on maintaining our roads.
Now, can I ask you, Mark, a question that I hear so many times when my fillings are rattled out in the back of a taxi on my way to work, and that is, where does my road tax go? Because people think, don't they, that road tax pays for the roads, but that isn't the case, is it, Mark?
No, that got stopped, I think, in 1937. I think Churchill raided it because there's quite a bit of money there, and at that time there wasn't the infrastructure. It all goes into a central fund. And in the report, it talks about the equivalent of 2 pence per litre of fuel being ring fenced. I wouldn't do that because, we've got electric vehicles, and electric vehicles actually put more load and strains on the road network. I think we need to go back to where we do have a road tax. So the road fund licence actually is applied across all vehicles, depending on their weight and load, how much they pay. There should be a minimum amount. I noticed the government is talking now, obviously, about charging electric vehicles, but they're very good at grandiose figures, lots of money to you and me. But the core situation is we have not invested in our roads. We're rated, based upon 2019 figures, 37th in the world for a G7 nation, and we're probably well down there. Apart from being bottom of the league table, we've probably been relegated to the Isthmian League.
And Mark, is this a false economy? So we let the roads fall into such disrepair when actually, if we invested in them in the first place and maintained them, then we wouldn't get these potholes in the first place. It wouldn't be so costly to fill them in.
Yeah, I mean, there was a YouGov's report over 10 years ago that said badly maintained roads was costing the UK economy £5 billion a year. Roll that forward now to, with the costs, increase of everything else, it's probably £10 billion a year. But, government aren't doing that. It's the taxpayer, road user that's picking up those bills. And don't forget cyclists that are killed or seriously injured, and motorcyclists as a result of potholes. It is a total false economy. You can see the more progressive nations that have invested in their roads that don't have nowhere near the impact. And France has always invested in roads far more. I mean, it probably started with Napoleon because he wanted to get his army across the country. But historically, it's been an easy place for authorities to cut. And I don't think that government and the Department of Transport and the Treasury really value it. It's a priority in the words. But we'll see what happens at the next election because, perhaps we need a pothole party.
You've actually just took the words right out of my mouth, because these kind of things really, really matter to voters. The big issues matter as well, like illegal immigration, cost of living, of course. But amongst motorists, there's very much a feeling out there, a cash cow that's being milked dry. They're paying through the nose for road tax, at the pump, ULEZ schemes, clean air, and yet we're driving on roads that sometimes look like a third world nation.
Yeah, I mean, over £50 billion a year is recovered from motorists through fuel duty, VAT on fuel duty. You've got a tax on a tax there, which I don't agree with whatsoever, and road fund licence. But also, residents pay into through council tax, and some proportion of the council tax is put in there where councils can afford it. I mean, I'm not advocating that councils are wonderful. I'm their biggest critic, but some of them are trying to do a very good job in difficult times. And there's some really good guys out there who want to do better, but, they've got one arm tied up their back and they're hopping on one leg.
Hey, Mark Morrell, really good to see you this morning. Or Mr. Pothole, as you like to be named, thank you very, very much. Good to see you this morning. Potholes drive you mad. It drives us all mad. So do let us know what you make of what Mark was saying there. Mr. Pothole, gbviews@gbnews.com. And let's get the weather for you now.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Dan Strout and this is your latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. So this weekend, it's a weekend of sunny spells and blustery showers, all courtesy of this area of low pressure to the west. And that will be driving in bands of showers in off of the west during the course of Saturday. And some of these showers become locally heavy and potentially thundery in places. Further to the south and east, staying largely dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures generally fairly reasonable for the time of year, about average for mid-August, with highs of 23 or 22 across the south and east, a little bit chillier further north and west. So those showers continue uninterrupted during the course of Saturday evening, but further south and east, drier with some clear skies in the mix. Overnight temperatures dropping into the mid-teen category. Although these temperatures on the screen are the temperatures we're going to see in towns and cities, step out into the countryside and you can take a degree or so off of these values. So it's a bright start for many on Sunday morning, although those showers continue, although turning slightly less breezy. So any showers we do see will become increasingly slow moving as we move our way through the day. And temperatures again on Sunday around average for the time of year. Thank you for listening.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome back. Well, earlier on we had a debate. Is it time to forgive and forget Prince Harry? Because the military honours list came out yesterday of who's in charge of which various regiments, and he was notable by his absence. Is it time to forgive and forget? What are they saying out there, Els?
Well, Elaine says, no, it's not time to forgive and forget. He did not care about his grandparents, his father or his brother.
Yeah, Lynn in Devon echoes that forgiveness is not a one-way street. It needs two-way explanation and expressions of regret. So it seems not many people out there are in the forgiving mood.
Well, let us know what you make of that. Would you like to see Prince Harry welcome back into the fold? Would you like to see him back in the British royal family? Do let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. But do stay with us because all of the showbiz news and gossip is up next with our very own Steph.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin.
Yeah, and world-renowned supermodels, including Naomi Campbell and Cindy Crawford, have reunited for an appearance on the front cover of Vogue.
Yes, the September issue of the iconic lifestyle and fashion magazine will be available by digital download and on newsstands from Tuesday, the 22nd of August. And here to tell us all about it is none other than our very lovely showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tecci. Good morning to you.
Beautiful.
So the supermodels, they are back together. Got the picture
action. When we think of supermodels, we think of these four ladies because the term literally was coined maybe in the 60s, but it was really these four women who put it in the map in the 1990s when they came together for a Vogue shoot. Very fresh faces. And this is the first time in over 30 years that they've come back together to reunite, to bring back the whole fashion elite, as people have been calling it. You know, during that time, all four of these women, they've gone on to have big careers in the fashion industry. But Linda Evangelista, it's good to see her again on the front cover because she's been a bit of a recluse over the past few years due to a botched facial surgery. And, you know, at the moment, she's saying she's happy to be ageing gracefully, even though she is still having Botox. So that does seem a bit of a contradiction.
Can I just say that as a professional magazine editor who's looked at many thousands of covers over the years, this has to be one of the most airbrushed images I think I've ever seen. And to be fair, you know, they are ladies in their 50s, still look fabulous. Cindy Crawford, I think, looks amazing because she looks like she's aged the most naturally. It's fair to say. There's been a bit of tweaking going on here.
There is, Martin. You know what? It is Vogue. Vogue is very aspirational. So even though Vogue under Edward Enfield tries to be about real beauty and natural beauty, you do have to think it's a business and people still want to sell magazines, as you all know. So they do have to give this kind of polished, airbrush look. And also, when you're talking about supermodels, the reason why they are supermodels is because they're almost like these ethereal characters that people always want to look to and admire their beauty. But coming up for these guys in September, they will be having a new series called The Supermodels, where they'll be talking about their rise to fame in the fashion industry from the 80s till now. They're very much been very lucky to have avoided some of the fashion abuse that has happened in the industry now. So, and they were very much in an era where there was less social media and there was less kind of diversity when it came to looks.
I think it's really nice to see the four of them back together. They are who you think of. They're synonymous, aren't they, with modelling. Stephanie, whilst we've got you, I wanted to ask you about Prince Harry, because we've been talking about him this morning. Do you think it is time to forgive and forget? Is blood thicker than water?
I definitely think it is time to forget, to forgive, because he is the king's son. So there has to be that kind of respect there for him. I know he's gone a bit wayward and stuff, but I think it's like who has a family that is perfect? There's always going to be family troubles, arguments, and I think, look how long it's been going on in this country, this kind of toxic relationship with Prince Harry and Meghan. How long can we really keep up with this narrative? I think it's kind of boring, if I'm being honest. And I think, you know, the royal family, we've had to forgive them for a lot of things. You know, it might be a bit controversial, but we've had to forgive the king and Camilla for their affair and put that behind us and take her on as our queen and give her that respect. So why can't we forgive Harry and Meghan?
Well, there's a lot of people out there who don't agree with that. I mean, this came to me yesterday when we saw the military honours list came out, and he was absent. Say what you like about him, he's done 2 tours in Afghanistan, he's earned his spurs. But is the real barrier is Mrs. Would you have to leave that baggage behind in Hollywood?
Well, the problem is you have to take them as a pair now. You cannot say to Harry, we'll take you back and not take Meghan. But in Meghan's... The problem here is Meghan's kind of turned away from the UK society and the UK lifestyle. So in that sense, that's why there's always going to be this division. But it would be nice to see the family reunite again, but maybe too much damage has been done. But I think as the public, we maybe need to change our opinion on that.
Wow.
What do you make of rumours that the marriage is on the rocks between Harry and Meghan? Would you believe that?
I don't believe that. I just think that they're doing it differently in the sense where they don't want to be slagging off the royals anymore. They don't want to be kind of putting this united front when it's like us against the world. I think now they're probably doing things individually in terms of their career and how they're going to be promoting themselves. I don't think they are splitting. I think Meghan's playing it right, actually, because I think if she does split from Prince Harry, what has all this been for?
Very true.
OK, we're going to have to leave it there, Steph, sadly, but you've got some great news about the Oscars.
Yes.
Go woke, go broke. We'll cover that next time. I can't wait to do that one. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Steph. Always good to see you in your fabulous Barbie pink.
Yeah, you are. And pink paper.
She's Showbiz Barbie.
Pink.
Yeah, and pink nails. We love it. Showbiz Barbie in the studio. Thanks very much, Steph. Now, all the news and views from Saturday's papers, that's up next. This is GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, the big read, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin.
And it's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is journalist and author Susan Holder and journalist and commentator Ella Whelan. Good morning to you both. Very good to see you. And Susan, let's start with you, shall we? The front page of The Eye and Chinese and Russian hackers breaking into the UK Foreign Office. This is quite alarming.
Yes, not with a kind of rusty key or anything. It's all through the computers, obviously. Not to be too alarmist about it, because it does say that they didn't get anything that was that classified. There was actually not marked as classified what they got into. The problem is, of course, is that it's what could happen. So apparently, it's literally as simple as what you always tell your mum not to do. Don't click on the something dodgy link in an email that you don't know what it is. If you get an email from somebody and there's a link in it, don't click on it, people. The fact that I have to explain that to the Foreign Office, however, that's why we're in trouble, isn't it? Because that's what's happened. And it would appear that Russian and Chinese hackers accessed Foreign Office internal systems. So it was a major security breach in as much as it shouldn't happen. It wasn't a major security breach. In fact, they didn't really get anything, only that diplomats could be placed in hostile environments, could be at risk because their details were there. That's as much as it was. The problem is with all of this is the big danger that we've got, isn't it? It's always going to be something cyber, something computer-based. That is what is going to be the undoing of a situation. I don't know why we worry about anything else, because we have so much of our lives now tied up with things online and to do with emails and to do with computers that literally, if someone just kind of messes with that, we're all done for, and that is the risk.
It makes you wonder, Ella, how much of an issue this is, or how much we just like a good spy story. I mean, last week it was Chinese cars are spying on us. They're recording our conversations. They're taking videos of us. The Electoral Commission was hacked into, was it 40 million sets of details, excluding home addresses, were exposed. Is this just a part of the fabric of the way we live now, or is it something we should genuinely be worried about?
Well, I remember a few months ago there was a concern about cars of officials and ministers working for the government being hacked, but because there was, technology within that could trace them and things like that. There's always been this concern, but I think as Susan points out, the issue is actually it might be based within computers, but it's always human error. And we have so much worry about AI, and maybe later on in the next round I'll be talking about Oliver Dowden and panics about AI and what the robots are going to do to threaten us. But most of the time it isn't a robot. It's a human error. It's a misplaced file. It's an email that's mishandled or whatever. But there is, obviously there is a serious question about security threats, but I think we have to also remember that there's a background discussion or narrative to this, which is that geopolitical concerns about China, about Russia, that always brings these stories to the front pages, even if, as Susan says, nothing actually necessarily happened, rather than some government officials being a bit red-faced.
OK, Ella, let's have a look at the Daily Mail, shall we? And this is about Gogglebox. It could be bad.
In terms of killjoy sort of stories, this is one of the worst. But anybody who watches Gogglebox, I watch it religiously, knows that, and you watch it for what they're going to say. But I also analyse their snacks. So each individual household or family, has a different kind of snack. There's one family that has Bakewell tarts. There's a sort of slightly more middle class families who have sort of pop chips or something, and it's part of the fabric of the show. But apparently, according to Professor Tim Spector, who, full disclosure, is got this new organisation, nutritional podcast, an organisation called Zoe, the nutrition firm, which is all about, looking at your gut microbe and institutionalising killjoyness, and by saying you shouldn't eat anything nice, has said that it's a terrible thing. And obviously, yes, eating crap after 9 p.m, not so good for you. You should be eating your dinner and then that's about it, because, especially if you want to watch your weight. But everybody knows that there's, when you're watching your favourite television shows, you like to have a biscuit, a cup of tea, or whatever else. And I think it's just indicative of the fact that these sort of stories keep coming up, and this sort of hectoring keeps coming up, is the idea that we cannot help ourselves but see bad things on television and immediately reach for the sweet cupboard, that there's no self-control within people, and that's obviously a nonsense.
There's a lot of snobbery, I think, in it as well. It's like, the working classes who watch TV just can't help themselves by gorging on burgers and pizzas and becoming obese and a liability to society. It's like, can we just watch the telly and enjoy it?
Yeah.
It's actually one of the few enjoyable things left, a lot of people.
There was snacking way before Gogglebox. I hate to break it to Mr. Spector, but, Gogglebox didn't invent it as well. It's not linked.
What's your favourite telly snack? Settling down.
Ooh, I like a Dorito.
Dorito.
Because they just endlessly...
Other crisps are available.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, you can't have an open tube of Pringles in the house, can you? And know they're open without having to go there. I find.
You can't stop.
Ella?
I don't like dark chocolate digestives, and I have tried to be on a diet, so my husband's only allowed to buy dark chocolate digestives so that I don't want one late at night.
I prefer them to the milk chocolate.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I do.
See, the thing is, if you're desperate, though, you'll suddenly get a kind of yearning for them.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I wonon't enjoy it, but I will eat it. Yeah.
Needs
Force
must.
yourself.
Needs must.
Another great pleasure, of course, is the British boozer. Now, we've been talking about the wonkiest pub in Britain.
Yeah.
Now it appears it was confirmed as an arson attack.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the story in today's Mirror? They want it to be rebuilt brick by brick.
Well, absolutely. So they've messed with the wrong pub here. The most crooked thing about the crooked pub, it seems to be quite what's happened to it, actually. Now, full disclosure, it's in the Black Country. I'm a Black Country girl. My first ever job as a journalist was on the Black Country Bugle. That's how Black Country I am.
Beautiful.
So, and it would appear that the people locally to where this pub has been demolished, it was bought, it then caught fire just days later, and within 24 hours, I think, it was completely demolished against what the council wanted. The council wanted it to be preserved as much as possible, and no one could get near the pub when it was on fire or when it was being demolished because strange heaps of dirt had been put there, which seemed to be blocking people's access. Now, the local people are up in arms about this, and the mayor, Andy Street, the mayor of Birmingham, Andy Street, has vowed he wants it to be built back brick by brick. Whether that's possible or not, I don't know. But you've seen Peaky Blinders, haven't you?
Yeah.
We're a hard lot in the Black Country, and we take our pubs very seriously. And it is an outrage that the Crooked House has been demolished in this way, and people are very, very upset about it, and it is a real loss. There's also some... In the Daily Express, it also has a slightly different angle, where it says that if you look at the pictures inside it, everything was so lopsided inside. It had stood for 260 years, but had started to kind of subside because of the subsidence. There was a grandfather clock, which was at a very weird angle. Grandfather clock didn't seem to be kind of there. They suspect it was removed beforehand. There's lots of kind of things all taking place in the research to see what actually went on. But wouldn't it be great if we could actually build that back? That would be brilliant.
And it seems to matter so much to the local community as well. I mean, after it was demolished to rubble, people were actually going almost like pay homage to this pub.
One of the best things I've seen on the internet, people have been putting signs up. One of them, and you'd have to come from the Black Country to kind of understand it, but there was a big sign put up that said, "Was Boston," which means good, "was Boston now Bosted." Bosted means broken.
Yeah.
So, that Black Country have kind of taken it very seriously.
I did a lot of campaign in the Black Country, and, the Banks's ales, for starters, cracking pint a bit. And also, what I love is you have the cheese and onion cobs on the bars. They're called cobs. They're called rolls elsewhere.
Cobs, cobs.
Yeah, cheese, onion, cob, just under a cover. Pork scratchings, Black Country pork scratchings are the best on the planet. And I think they've messed with something at their peril here. Because
they really have.
It's struck to the heart of something that really matters. It's not just a pub, is it?
Yeah, my husband actually worked for Banks's for a while. There was a kind of a big Noddy Holder advert with for Banks's beer. Yeah, no, you can't mess with your pub, and you certainly can't do what's happened here. And I do think there will be more to come on this story for sure.
There will be too. Ella, let's have a look at the front page of the Daily Mail, shall we? And this is a trans row over women's wards.
Yeah, so this is a story that's been, a discussion that's been going on for a long time about what's happening in hospitals in relation to the provision and treatment of transgender patients. So you have someone who comes and says, my gender doesn't match with my biological sex, and therefore I'd like to be on a different ward. Usually, most of the time, it's a biological trans woman wanting to be put in a women's ward or treated in a women's ward. And, there has been some kind of consternation about this. In 2010, the government said that it was, caused indignity and was an assault to dignity to have mixed wards. Later in 2021, there was a review to look at the fact that there was potentially even sex offenders being put on women's wards. That review seems to disappear into nowhere. And so the Daily Mail has done this Freedom of Information request, sent out to all NHS hospital trusts. 65 replied. And of those 65, they said that they confirmed that they allowed transgender patients to use the facilities of their choice. And not only that, but that there was no restrictions on who counts as a transgender patient. Now, I think nobody would have any problem with the idea that every patient, whatever gender or whatever you are, being treated with respect and dignity and being kept happy and safe throughout your medical procedure. But there is a much larger question here, which is that there are single-sex spaces, particularly in places like hospitals, are necessary for a reason. It's a very vulnerable, you know, I've just been on one recently having a baby. There is a particular vulnerability to yourself when you are a medical patient. You're walking around with a hospital gown with your backside showing, you know, you need to go to the loo in the middle of the night, all these things. There's a reason why single-sex wards are important. And the fact that the NHS seems to be completely blind to the reality in relation to this, and even to be going as far as the Mail reports that some trusts, you know, Sussex being the most famous, but also North Cumbria, having pregnancy policies that refer to pregnant people or birthing persons, because, as the NHS Trust states, maternity services have typically been designed as a cisgender, women-only service, as if that was the most terrible thing in the world. How dare cisgender women be the only one that have babies? This is just madness. But it's not only madness, it's also quite dangerous, because it means that women's hard-won rights are safety, but also just our dignity, our privacy is on the line. And that's not to say that every trans person wants to come in and make people feel uncomfortable. Of course not, but there will always be bad actors.
What's it going to take before we have a sudden outbreak of common sense and something is done about this? Because we saw with the Isla Bryson case in Scotland, a bloke who previously had raped 2 women, put into a women's prison. That was reversed when there's a huge outcry. There's a case here from March last year where a biological man in a hospital ward raped a patient, a woman, but was told it wasn't possible to be a rape because they weren't a man. When did this go so badly wrong?
Well,
and when will this stop?
Well, we just have to keep talking, and I think women have to start standing up for ourselves a little bit more. We've always done it, and we were never afraid to do it before, and women are becoming afraid to say what they really feel about this.
Well, you see the likes of J.K. Rowling.
Yes, because none of us want to be cancelled. That's not what anybody wants. None of us also want to, as Ella just, perfectly put it, everyone is entitled to live exactly how they want and be treated with respect, and we all think that.
That should include women's safety.
That should include women. And it also strikes me that nobody ever gets asked what is a man. We're only ever asked what to define ourselves constantly. And I do think, I mean, the thing about the hospitals, what really kind of surprises me is the one place where you really do need to kind of stick to biology and talk about what people's sex actually is when you're receiving medical treatment.
Well, you're right, you're most vulnerable.
Well, it's not just that. It's just that you can identify how you like, you can live the way you want, you can wear what you want to wear, but you cannot say that you are one thing if you're being treated medically for another. And I think what will happen is this is a generation. When we get a few years down the line and people who have lived happily, however they want, for years, start receiving or having to receive, unfortunately, medical treatment for things that are to do with their biological sex, it will come home to everybody that actually there are things that you can't get away from. And when you're dealing with somebody's prostate or you're dealing with somebody's womb or their ovaries, that is biology. And you can present and live how you wish, but you cannot blur the lines in a medical environment. And I don't think it's very healthy to do that because you could make mistakes. And I think when mistakes start happening that actually, unfortunately, might affect transgender people, then maybe people will wake up even more. But I do think women have to start speaking out for themselves and saying, up with this, we will not put.
Yeah.
Well, you will have a view on that at home. Do let us know what you make of that. gbviews@gbnews.com. Susan, let's have a look at the Times. We'll stay with you. And this is an interesting one. Youngsters are apparently seeking out lazy girl jobs. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I've picked this one because it's actually the conversation I had with my cab driver this morning. Strangely. So
Very good having a conversation that early in the morning.
He was very chatty. It was very good, actually. Woke me right up. It was lovely. So this is in the Times. And it says that on TikTok, I mean, that's where everything is, isn't it? Apparently. I'm not there, so I don't know what's going on. It's quite, I think I'll stick with my ignorance, actually. But a recruitment company is promoting the fact that lazy girl jobs, I presume it's lazy, but I don't know why we're just sticking to girls and why there aren't lazy boys. But they're recommending that people be the second worst performing person and you'll do all right. What's all that about? And they're saying that the Generation Z, whatever that is, people born after 1997, if you're not sure, I'm never sure of those titles, they don't want jobs that actually involve too much effort. They want kind of an easy life. Well, don't we all? But it doesn't really work like that. My cab driver this morning was bemoaning the fact that we are very lacking in black cab drivers in London because nobody wants to take the knowledge anymore. It can take up to 4 years to study the knowledge, to know so you know all of the streets of London. And he also, in the pandemic, had already had a trade as a butcher, so was able to go back to that. And he was going on about how he can't understand why people don't want to get a trade, don't want to do jobs that actually contribute to society. And he was really proud of the fact that he had paid for it, bought a house, paid for his own wedding, and had got a baby on the way. And it was all kind of through his hard work and effort that he'd done that.
I want to quickly bring you in on this one, Ella. This is like the ceiling of low aspiration, it would seem. It was basically, it's the working from homers gaming how to do as little as possible while getting us paid as much as possible. Is that empowerment? Is this feminism? Or is it just basically bone-idle people who've got used to being in their pyjamas with their lattes?
I'm not split on this one. On the one hand, you know, in a superficial way, obviously, all of us, if we could make a quick buck doing nothing, wouldn't that be nice? And I know what I'd spend my time doing if it wasn't working. On the other hand, it is very short-sighted, and it should be the adults in the room, whether it's, you know, parents or an older generation, getting young people to realise that actually, in terms of your life, you get much more fulfilment if you get good at something and do something which is fulfilling. It doesn't matter what that is, but if you have, you know, in particular, actually, I think in particular with young men, having a skill, having a trade can do a huge amount for them in terms of not just self-esteem, but feeling that you are worthwhile and that is a genuine thing, that you can do something that other people can't do. And so I think, you know, as much as the scrolling on TikTok might make you and social media managers and all this thing is a very sort of Gen Z, and by the way, I'm over 30, so I'm as in the dark as you with this. I don't go anywhere near TikTok. It is attractive. It's a bubble that's going to burst at some point. And I don't think anybody really, if they think about it, wants to wake up 30 and realising that the only thing they can do is scroll.
And not having a purpose is terrible for your mental health. It's a really bad thing.
We saw a lot of that during lockdown. Look, guys, a huge injection of common sense this morning on the pay-per-view. Thank you very much, Ella Whelan, and, of course, Suze Holder. Thank you very much. Superb.
Yeah, fab. Really good to see you both. Now, a staggering 86% of people admit to having anxiety about their summer holidays. That's according to a new report.
Well, I haven't got a passport, so exclude me from that. Holiday specialists on the beach claim Brits are having holiday angst about anything and everything to do with their time abroad.
So what's all of this about? We're joined now by broadcaster Lucy Beresford. Really good to see you this morning, Lucy. Holidays are meant to be relaxing, so what are we so anxious about?
Well, it seems that we're anxious about absolutely everything. As you say, the On the Beach holiday retailers came up with this survey, and it shows that we're worried about the actual planning of the trip, booking for something, discovering that it's more expensive than we'd been told it was. We're worried about the weather. We're worried about body confidence when we actually get to our destination. And it's really hard to let go of those anxieties while we're on holiday. So not only do we have the angst before we go, we have it while we're on holiday, and it spoils it.
One of the things I get most anxious about now is the cost of holidays. And I wonder if, do you think we're going, Lucy, towards a time where holidays are going to become so expensive? We'll go back to the 1970s and they'll become the kind of premise of rich people. Meanwhile, you know, impoverished Brits are forced to stay in Britain, and we're fighting over caravans and places by the seaside which are becoming overly packed.
Oh, well, I speak as a good Bognor Regis girl, so there is nothing wrong with staying in the UK and having a beach holiday there. But travel can be incredibly exciting, stimulating, mind expanding. So I would also be in the camp of saying that people do need to travel because it gives you new experiences, you try new food, you experience different cultures and customs. But there's a lot to be said for recognising that if you're going out of your comfort zone, which is fundamentally what travel is often about, you need to perhaps protect yourself from the fact that it will be a bit stressful, that always stepping out of your comfort zone feels like a bit of a risk. And it isn't just about the cost. It's about the things that you might be exposed to, maybe the travel delays or the fact that the weather isn't what you thought it was going to be like. But that's life in general, in a way. Don't forget, we take ourselves on holiday. So if we're not comfortable in our own skin, then actually wherever we go on holiday isn't actually going to be that much fun. And perhaps it's also down to the people that we go on holiday with. That perhaps, I'm a psychotherapist as well, and there are always a spike in referrals to people that come to see therapists after the summer holidays because it's so stressful being with your family. So perhaps it's about travelling on your own every once in a while, discovering yourself.
Yeah, a bit of eat, pray, love, maybe, Lucy. Really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Do you find holidays stressful? If you do, what is it that stresses you out? Is it the cost, like Martin?
Yeah.
Is it body issues? Is that something that makes you nervous? Is it the family? Are they just a bit stressful? Do let us know, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Actually, the more Lucy was speaking there, the more that was chiming with me. Yeah, you go on holiday with your family, you're locked up for a week or so. It can seem like a prison sentence sometimes.
Yeah, maybe. Well, there's plenty more to come, including all of the latest on the migrant crisis. This is GB News.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Dan Stroud and this is your latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. So this weekend, it's a weekend of sunny spells and blustery showers, all courtesy of this area of low pressure to the west. And that will be driving in bands of showers in off of the west during the course of Saturday. And some of these showers become locally heavy and potentially thundery in places. Further to the south and east, staying largely dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures generally fairly reasonable for the time of year, about average for mid-August, with highs of 23 or 22 across the south and east, a little bit chillier further north and west. So those showers continue uninterrupted during the course of Saturday evening, but further south and east, drier with some clear skies in the mix. Overnight temperatures dropping into the mid-teen category. Although these temperatures on the screen are the temperatures we're going to see in towns and cities, step out into the countryside and you can take a degree or so off of these values. So it's a bright start for many on Sunday morning, although those showers continue, although turning slightly less breezy. So any showers we do see.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 12th of August. Today, the migrant barge evacuated. Channel migrants housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge have been dramatically moved out after Legionella bacteria was found in its water supply. That's despite the fact the Home Office says no one on board has fallen ill.
And do you always park your cars properly? Well, Taliban officials don't. The Afghan diplomats have regularly left vehicles in the wrong place or without the correct permit here in the UK. And they're using an international treaty as a loophole to avoid paying the fines. The question is, what are they doing in the first place?
And the Lionesses will play Colombia in the World Cup quarter-final today. We'll have all the details later on in the show.
And after a pleasant sunny day for many yesterday, what will the weather look like today? Well, here's Dan Stroud from the Met Office with an update.
It is a weekend of sunny spells and showers, so keep those brollies to hand. To find out exactly where those showers will be, tune in to the latest forecast with me later.
Good morning, I'm Ellie Costello.
I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, let's start this hour with some breaking news, shall we? Because dozens of Channel migrants have been rescued after their small boat got into difficulties this morning in the Channel.
A Dover lifeboat and several French vessels were involved in the operation to rescue multiple people in the water about 5 miles off the French coast.
Yes, GB News' Kent producer filmed at Dover Harbour as a number of people were taken off the Dover lifeboat on stretchers and were transferred to waiting ambulances. So just to remind you of that breaking news in the last few moments, that dozens of Channel migrants have been rescued after their small boat got into difficulties this morning. And we did just see that footage there of several people being stretchered off that lifeboat, the Dover lifeboats. We will, of course, bring you more as we have it. But joining us now is GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Good morning to you, Mark. What do we know?
Well, a significant incident that has unfolded in the English Channel this morning, the second rescue really in the last couple of days out in the Channel, and it appears from the information that we have received that this was, as far as the emergency services dealing with it, declared a major incident. They had the Dover lifeboat and several French patrol vessels involved in this. Now, the location, we're told, was some 5 miles from Sangatte, which is not too far from Calais. For some reason, those casualties, though, were brought to Dover Harbour rather than the French side. That may have just been an issue in terms of the preparedness of the emergency services to deal with those who were taken off. But our producer down in Kent, who was filming all of this unfolding about 5 a.m. this morning, said that he saw, and indeed you can see from the video that we've obtained at GB News from him, that several people were taken off the lifeboat in stretchers. Other people were taken off, covered in blankets, walking off, described potentially as walking wounded. there was at least half a dozen ambulances and Coast Guard vessels that have been stationed at Dover Harbour, at the Western Jetfoil, which is where these Border Force boats and lifeboats come into with the migrants that are picked up in the channel. As I say, this is different. This is not just what normally happens on a daily basis, which is these small boats come across, they're spotted in the water, and then a Border Force or a lifeboat attends that scene and transfers the people on board. We understand that there were multiple people in the water, as happened on Thursday again when a boat was, it seems, inundated with water and people ended up in the sea there. Multiple people in the sea rescued by those French vessels and by the Dover lifeboat. And it looks like there was about 60 or so on board the lifeboat when it came into the Western Jetfoil in Dover, which is an indication of just how full this boat must have been.
Mark, you and I both know, having seen those craft up close, they are often improvised, flimsy, unseaworthy, death traps really waiting to happen. We can only hope there's been no serious casualties or loss of life here. But one technical question for you, Mark. If this incident happened 5 miles off the French coast, why were people brought back to Dover?
Well, this is one of the questions we'll need answered in the hours ahead. It's a bit of a puzzle. Normally, if you are involved in an incident, unless it's right on the kind of the halfway point between France and the UK, then it's wherever they can get someone to as quickly as possible. That could be on the French or the UK side. But this was, we're told from our Kent producer, well inside French waters, about 5 miles, he reckons, off Sangatte, which is, as I say, not too far from Calais. But it might be just due to the preparedness of the emergency services mustering to determine which was actually going to be the quickest point to get them to. If we were able, on the UK side, to get emergency services and ambulances to Dover Harbour to be waiting for those boats to come across, it might have been deemed that that was just the quickest, more expedient way of doing it. But regardless, what we have is an incident in which we think around about 5 a.m. this morning, somehow this boat was inundated with water. It could have been a wave because we're told that conditions were pretty horrific out in the channel first thing this morning, with winds blowing at about 20 miles an hour from the southwest, which of course whips up those waves. I mean, it might not be too difficult for larger container ships that plough up and down the channel all of the time, but when you're talking about a flimsy inflatable, they can be inundated fairly quickly. And if it's not the weather that whips up the waves and inundates these boats, it can be the passing wake from one of these big container ships that does it. We don't know really the cause of the incident, except to say that there was definitely an incident with people in the water and these multiple boats responding to that. They pulled them from the water. We're not told at this stage of any fatalities, but clearly there are those who were deemed to have been injured that were stretchered off and now taken to hospitals in the Kent area, with about half a dozen or so ambulance and paramedic vehicles waiting for them in the quayside at Dover Harbour.
OK, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on that breaking news this morning. Thank you very much on that Channel rescue, as several migrants have been rescued after getting into difficulty in the Channel this morning. As you just heard from Mark White there, he believes it happened at about 5 a.m. this morning. He described it as a significant incident. Well, Charlie Rowley joins us in the studio now. Good to see you, Charlie. Your reaction to what Mark White was just saying there, this significant incident in the Channel, several migrants have been rescued.
Well, I think this just highlights how perilous the journey is, that anybody that is going to make that crossing or attempt that crossing, it is a dangerous route into the UK. It's not something that people do lightly. And it follows the incident that we heard just last week in Italy, where a number of migrants lost their lives because of the crossings that are taking place, not just across Calais into Dover, but across Europe. It is a European crisis that we're seeing, but as I say, it highlights the perilous journey that people do take, which is all the more reason why we have to do more to stop it.
And, you know, I cannot repeat enough, if you go to Dover, if you see these craft, I mean, they are lashed together from PVC sheeting, they're just plastic welded together, 2x4 wood. I mean, they are just basic homemade craft. People are paying thousands of pounds to get on these boats. We saw when the weather was calm, they're so heavily laden with people, they're practically bending in half. When the weather gets choppy like this, when the window of opportunity to set to sea is small, these kind of disasters are going to happen. They're going to happen increasingly often. Surely it's time to kind of try and end the pull factors. Stopping the boats could save lives.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the craft that you were just describing is the reason why I think the UK government didn't get much press coverage. Has done a deal with Turkey because of the materials and the supply chain of the small boats. There is a journey apparently that comes from Turkey, some of the materials and the boats, before they even get to Calais. So stopping the craft, breaking up the criminal gangs, going after the people that are preying on those that do depart with thousands of pounds of their cash to come into the country, sold a false hope, a false dream, and then end up making that crossing. And as I say, the conditions, as Mark was just describing brilliantly there, the conditions, even though it's the middle of August, are not great. It is a dangerous journey, and we've seen, I think for the first time, the reality of how dangerous that crossing really is.
Charlie, let's talk about the Bibby Stockholm barge, shall we, in Dorset. 39 migrants have been moved off that now after traces of Legionella bacteria was found in the water supply on the boat. I mean, this is humiliating, isn't it, for the government?
It is, but it's not good. And if you're the Home Secretary, if you're Robert Jenrick, the Immigration Minister, you might have a few questions for your officials to say, look, you know, I gave the green light on the basis that you would hope all the checks had been undertaken, that all of the testing that needed to take place had happened before, as a Minister or the Secretary of State. I gave the green light for Bibby Stockholm to become operational. If that hasn't happened, or if there were details that were missed out, or a communication breakdown in that chain that has now come to light, or truth has come to light, then of course there are serious questions for those decision makers and officials that were presenting the options to ministers in the Home Office.
Yeah, because the blame game will now start. Jenrick was blamed for taking his eye off the ball. Of course, he was in Turkey, courting the Turks about trying to break supply chains, giving them £3 million for the privilege. Junior ranking civil servants, no doubt, will come under the microscope. They're being blamed for even taking time off work. The work from home culture may have contributed to this. But at the end of the day, the book stops with the government in power. We've reached the 100,000 mark this week of illegals. Another minor tragedy, hopefully not too major, happened this morning. We can't keep blaming the ECHR. We can't keep blaming Keir Starmer, NGOs, lefty lawyers, cabals of cronies. The buck stops with the government. It's been an unmitigated disaster.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I smile, Riley, because it's the lawyers and those on the left that have, blocked so many attempts to try and deal with this crisis, particularly in the House of Lords, you might argue. And one thing on its own is not going to solve the problem. So Bibby Stockholm on its own in isolation is not going to solve the problem. You need to target the criminal gangs. You need to disrupt that trade that takes place. You need increased patrolling, which the government is committed to. You need an increase in border force. You need an increase in the number of people that are dealing with the backlog and the processing of those that are trying to come into this country. You need a Rwanda scheme that is given the green light by the courts, that again, something that we've got sort of held up in the Supreme Court. All of these things combined will reduce the pull factor, will deal with the people that come into this country illegally, that allows our processing system to be adequate and fair and up to scratch to those that actually have a genuine claim, can come into the country, where they will be welcomed, where they will be integrated, where we will look after them, with people that actually have an asylum claim to make. Those that don't and that are chancing their arm and that are cheating the system will be deported, and that will send a very clear message to anybody that wants to come into the country and anybody that wants to sell a false dream and a false hope to put people on those boats that suffer, as what we've seen today. Those people will be held to account, and ultimately we'll see stopping of the boats.
But Charlie, that is a very, very long list, and the government just doesn't have the time, do they? Time is not on their side, and we know that this is an election issue that matters to people.
Exactly, it matters to so many people. It's there's a reason why it's the 5th priority of the Prime Minister, because it does matter to so many people. But it's on the back of the conversation that I think we've had previously. For so long, this issue hasn't been tackled, and it hasn't been something that's been in the public eye as much as it is today, and it will be even more so today on the back of this breaking news story. And I think that's why the government have got to do all that it can and demonstrate that it's doing all that it can. And that's Bibi Stockholm, that's Rwanda, that's increased patrols, that's breaking up the criminal gangs. It's doing all that it can and demonstrating that it can do all of it, doing all that it can to break up this terrible priority.
Charlie, for all of that tough talk, the only boat that's been stopped is the Bibi Stockholm. That's where we're at. Now, when it comes to the next general election, will the Tories be able to get away with the same game they tried in 2019? It'll be much worse under Corbyn. It'll be much worse under Starmer. Or is the brutal reality now the new normal of being in Britain with a billion people, beg your pardon, always on the lookout, on the shift, looking for a better life? Is this now illegal immigration just a part of the fabric of modern Britain?
Well, I think there's no doubt that in the general election campaign that the government will want to tell the public as to why things have taken as long as it might have done, why things have been held up in the courts, why the laws in this country haven't been sufficient or tough enough. And that's because the Labour Party at every opportunity have voted down the immigration bill, that have voted down the police crime sentencing bill, which was toughening up our approach to stopping criminal gangs and stopping people coming into this country illegally. So I think there will be a factual point that the government and the Conservative Party will want to point out to the public as to why things have taken so long. But, there will be people that are sitting at home today thinking, well, how on earth, why are we seeing record numbers of people that are coming to this country despite the rhetoric from the government to say that they're going to stop the boats? It is because it's a complex issue. It's because for too long the Home Office, I think, to be frank, haven't grappled with this issue. And we're seeing that today, and that's why people across this country will be frustrated with the numbers of people that are coming into this country illegally, because it's about fairness. The British public just want fairness. We will always look after people that have a genuine claim and are seeking asylum in this country. It's in our British DNA. We will look after you. But if you're cheating the system, chancing your arm, then I'm afraid to say we need to be tougher, and that's exactly what the government will want to ensure.
OK, Charlie Rowley, really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much. I think lots of you will agree with Charlie Rowley. Do let us know what you make of that. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Yeah, it just seems to be rolling on and on and on. It just makes you wonder, will we ever get to the bottom of it?
Well, simply, there's not a simple answer, is there? Because if there was, it would have been fixed a very, very long time ago. And Charlie just listed a very long list of how he thinks this could be fixed. But the government doesn't have time on their side with an election looming. Let us know what you think is the fix to this. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, many people may have received a few parking tickets in their life, me being somebody with many in my past. But in most cases, they either pay or appeal against them.
But Afghan diplomats here in the UK have regularly left vehicles on double yellow lines or parking spaces without the correct permit. But when they get parking tickets, they avoid paying using their international treaties.
Well, it's reported that the Afghan embassy owes over £100,000 of fines to Westminster Council.
Well, yours now is Barbie Siegel, owner of appealnow.com and parkingticketexpert.com. Good morning to you, sir. First of all, the big question is, why the Taliban even in Britain in the first place?
I have no idea. This is something to do with politics. I only specialise in parking tickets. I think you need another expert.
So tell us about this loophole then. What do you understand about this parking loophole? How are they getting away with this?
Well, they have diplomatic immunity and therefore they can't be sued. And this has been going on for years with lots and lots of countries. So it's not really news. It's just something which the newspapers pop up occasionally when there's not much else in the news.
But the fact of the matter remains, this happens not just with Afghans. Routine, isn't it? For example, during supercar season, when the Saudis come to Britain with their expensive cars, they rev around Knightsbridge, park outside Harrods, and then just clear off and don't pay any of the tickets. Is there any hope of ever retrieving any of this money, or they leg it and get away with it?
Simple answer is no.
They can't get any of the money back?
Because they can't sue. Paying parking tickets is just discretionary as far as embassies are concerned. Many embassies pay, many embassies don't. But there's nothing the local authorities can do about it because of the diplomatic immunity.
OK, Barry Siegel, really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that story. Thank you.
Well, that was short and to the point, wasn't it? There you go. You can't get your money back. It's the part and parcel of just doing a runner. If only it was so easy for us in reverse. I think many of us Brits abroad would be doing the same. But I bet you they'd find some EU loophole to finger us.
It's very difficult to actually appeal a parking fine, coming from somebody who gets them all the time. It used to be a bit easier, but now it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I just generally say this is my first time in the area. I don't know the road very well. It doesn't wash anymore, people. It doesn't wash anymore. If you've got any tips for that, do let me know.
Charlie Rowley's still here. He was laughing at Barry's, how do you put it, somewhat staccato response.
Clipped answer.
Yes. And I was sitting here thinking to myself, maybe the Mayor of London City can focus on reclaiming some of these fines rather than penalising hard-working people for the ULEZ fine, £12.50 a day. You should go after the people that don't pay their parking fines.
I like the way
Including you, Ellie, by the sounds of it.
Well, I do actually pay them, Charlie. This is the thing. I end up paying them because I can't appeal them. I'd like to.
Only Charlie
Maybe I need to speak to the Taliban.
Only Charlie could turn a story about the Taliban into an attack on City Con.
Charlie, before we let you go, I know you like it when we throw you random questions. We're talking about random sandwich fillings this morning.
Yes.
It's on the front page of the Daily Star. Apparently beans in a sarnie is very popular amongst Brits. Do you have any strange sandwich combinations that we should be aware of?
Well, when I was a kid, I always used to like peanut butter and Marmite together in a sandwich, and they've now done an actual spread, a peanut butter and Marmite spread. You can actually buy it on the... I'm ahead of my time. and the public will catch on. And so I always used to have peanut butter and Marmite. I thought it was a wonderful combination.
You know what? You're not alone. We've had a few viewers message in and say that was their favourite.
I'm not sure about peanut butter and jelly, which is an American thing, so peanut butter and jam, which I wouldn't go anywhere near, I don't think.
And with bacon, that was the old Elvis Presley special.
Was it?
It was, yeah, it's all super. But it's quite run-of-the-mill, your taste, I'm afraid, Charlie, compared to a lot of the people today. There's one guy here has a Chinese takeaway sandwich the morning after. I think that's a touch too much.
What do you think of that, Charlie?
Well, I think we've all had a takeaway from the night before after night out, but I'm not entirely sure in a sandwich that's the
As Ella Whelan would say, you can make anything into a sandwich. I think it's a great words to live by. Thanks, Charlie. Really good to see you.
Yes.
Do keep the sandwich fillings coming in. Well, your descriptions of them at least. gbviews at gbnews.com. You're with Breakfast on GB News, Britain's news channel.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Dan Stroud and this is your latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. So this weekend, it's a weekend of sunny spells and blustery showers, all courtesy of this area of low pressure to the west. And that will be driving in bands of showers in off of the west during the course of Saturday. And some of these showers become locally heavy and potentially thundery in places. Further to the south and east, staying largely dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures generally fairly reasonable for the time of year, about average for mid-August, with highs of 23 or 22 across the south and east, a little bit chillier further north and west. So those showers continue uninterrupted during the course of Saturday evening, but further south and east, drier with some clear skies in the mix. Overnight temperatures dropping into the mid-teen category. Although these temperatures on the screen are the temperatures we're going to see in towns and cities, step out into the countryside and you can take a degree or so off of these values. So it's a bright start for many on Sunday morning, although those showers continue, although turning slightly less breezy. So any showers we do see will become increasingly slow moving as we move our way through the day. And temperatures again on Sunday around average for the time of year. Thank you for listening.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Da-da-da-da-dum, etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, agreed. My superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties. We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. The time is 8:27 and it's sports time now. We're going to go through today's biggest sporting stories with Aidan McGee. Good morning to you.
Morning to you both. Good to see you.
Pleasure. Good to see you. And let's start with Harry Kane, shall we? Because I never thought he'd go. I didn't think he wanted to go, and it looks like he is.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're seeing announcements from a few sources this morning that the deal is now signed. I think that probably would have happened late last night, I would think, allowing for the 1 hour time difference. If he's registered with the Bundesliga before 2 o'clock today, Ellie, he could actually play tonight in the German Super Cup, which is their equivalent of the German equivalent of the Community Shield. They're playing RB Leipzig, so we could see him in a Bayern Munich shirt on the pitch this evening, which would be astonishing. However, I did feel this was going to go through because on Thursday, I think, when was it? Earlier in the week, he was left out of the Barcelona game, a prestige friendly, which they lost 4-2. He didn't play. There wasn't a reason given for his injury. His manager, Ange Postecoglou, had said overnight that, or said in the last 24 hours or so, that he'd been preparing for life without Harry Kane. So there was a full expectation that he was going to leave. I can't see the economic value in keeping him for another season and allowing him to walk out for free. You want to realise some value on your players. He's 30 years old. I think it's a brilliant move for him. I really do. Yes, all right, he's probably going to miss out on the Premier League scoring record yesterday. In fact, Alan Shearer put out a tweet yesterday.
Yeah.
Because it's his record out in front.
That's right.
And he put out a tweet saying he was dressed up like an airline pilot, showing how he came the way to Germany to get him out of England, so he doesn't break the record. But extraordinary move, £94.6 million. He's going to be on 600 grand a week. He's going to a super club who regularly win the Champions League, and they win their domestic league every year. He's going to win trophies. You could argue that he's kind of sacrificing personal glory to win trophies, and I think that it's a brilliant move.
I can't believe we're saying cheerio to Kano, mainly because I thought he wanted that immortality. He doesn't need the money. He's got a few bob already, right? But you can't beat the immortality of beating Shearer's goal-scoring record. Do you think this is a temporary blip and he'll be back?
I think he'll be back one day, yeah. I don't think he'll... I mean, someone told me the other day that Tottenham may even have a buyback clause, and that was what the stumbling block was in the last 48 hours before the move. However, he's more important. He wants to win the Champions League. Bayern Munich got a good chance to win the Champions League. They're trying to rebuild their side. They lost... last summer, they lost to Robert Lewandowski. They weren't quite able to replace him. They brought in Sadio Mane from Liverpool. That turned out to be an absolute disaster.
Yep.
And so Harry Kane going in there gives them a fulcrum at the front of their attack, and I believe they'll be very, very strong in Europe. And if he wins the Champions League, will anyone really care that he didn't win the Premier League? Yeah, OK, he didn't do it with an English club, but this is still... You know, the best players want to play at the best clubs, and sometimes the best clubs are not in this country, they're in Europe. OK, so the Premier League kicked off last night. Man City destroyed Burnley, has to be said. Yep.
Full table of fixtures today, including my team, Forest, away at Arsenal. Going to be a bit sticky for the tricky trees.
Well, it is indeed, but Declan Rice can make his league debut. Yes, he played in the Community Shield last week. Tough trip for Nottingham Forest, but just like Burnley last night, their season's not going to be defined on how they do against the big clubs at the very top. However, you know, as you said off air, Forest did beat them twice last season.
Yep.
We got some other standout fixtures today. I mean, I say standout fixtures. I mean, Luton are going to Brighton, which is quite interesting. But it looks like the really big ones this weekend are not going to have not been reserved for the opening day. They're probably going to, you know, if you look at like it's Sheffield United against Palace, Brighton, Luton, Bournemouth, West Ham, Everton, Fulham. They're not the sort of the big four sides facing each other. Although Liverpool play Chelsea over the weekend, and they've got a problem because Brighton are selling this player, Moises Caicedo, £111 million. They've agreed a deal with Liverpool, but he doesn't want to go to Liverpool. He wants to go to Chelsea.
Right.
So extraordinary money for a player who was signed 2 years ago for £4.5 million from Independiente in Argentina. He spends a year on loan at Beerschot in Belgium, and now Brighton are selling him for £111 million. Honestly, their business is just extraordinary.
And it'd be a great piece of business for Brighton. I mean, a club like them, that can keep them afloat for years.
They have people working around the country, around the world, looking for players all over the world. They can sign a player from absolutely anywhere, and they put them in the team. Somewhere along the line, Martin, it's good coaching. You can't just take a player from a small league, put them in the Premier League and expect them to get on. You have to get them on the training pitch and work them into a team. So there is a bit of old-fashioned element to it as well, apart from just the analytics.
Yep.
But what a story. I mean, if he goes... They've made in 2 years, and one of those years... He's only had one season in the Premier League. They make £105 million profit on him. That's extraordinary.
Yep.
Aidan, let's have a quick word on the Women's World Cup, shall we, to end?
Absolutely. It's 11:30. England are in Sydney. They face Colombia. England are now the favourites on account of the fact that Canada, Brazil, the USA and Germany have all been knocked out. And there's pressure on England because they're 21 places above Colombia in the world rankings. Yep. However, they've lost Lauren James. Now, we thought with the stamping incident against Nigeria in the last round, we thought with the stamp on the head, is she going to get a one-match ban, which meant she just missed today? Or is she going to get a three-match ban, which means the rest missed the tournament? They've compromised in the middle, FIFA, and they've decided that it's a two-match ban. But it's still England's top player. She's a top scorer, top assist maker. She is the kind of X factor in England's forward line because they hadn't been scoring many goals in the lead up to the tournament. They haven't scored loads in this tournament apart from the game against China.
But that means that she could be back for the final if England were to make
semi-final.
it.
Sorry, no, it's the final. Sorry, you're absolutely right. Yeah, because it's two. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, but big game today, and I think they'll win. I predicted 2-1, and my predictions are normally quite good.
Yeah, they are, and I might have a few quid on that.
Yeah, 2-1. I think Colombia will score, but they can't be discounted because don't forget Colombia put Germany out in the group stage. So, and at this stage of the competition, you can't take anyone lightly anyway.
Yeah, but I think that's worth the squeak, Aidan. 2-1 Lionesses. I'll have a bit of that.
If I got it right, remind me, yeah? If I didn't, forget about it.
Forget about it. Cheers. All right, Aidan.
Good to see you, Aidan. Thanks very much. Thank you. Up next is The Papers. You're with Breakfast on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. And it's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is journalist and author Susan Holder and journalist and commentator Ella Whelan. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
And Susan, we're talking wine. It's never too early.
Yes, but we're not whining about wine. It's a good story because all that rain that everyone moaned about for weeks and weeks and weeks actually has done a bit of good, because apparently English winemakers are expecting a bumper crop because of all that rain. They do need a bit of sun now into September, which I think is on the cards, but they're saying that they are actually getting much bigger yield because of all that rain, so that's good. And I didn't realise just how huge an industry this was. Apparently in 2021, £335 million worth of stock was exported to non-EU regions and £132 million to inside the EU. It's a big business.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's great.
I like a bit of English wine. I was once asked...
English sparkling.
Yeah, I was once asked to leave an English vineyard. Yeah, because I went cycling down the Camel Estuary Trail down in Cornwall, and there was along the way, so I cycled with my top off, you know.
Martin.
Poof, I got down there, ordered a glass of wine, and they said, we don't want people like you in here. And then a coachload of tourists arrived, and they were all like suited and booted.
I think that's fair play, Martin.
Yeah, they kicked me out for being a yobbo.
I think that's...
shirt off,
like
unless
that.
you're on the beach.
Yeah.
You should keep your shirt on.
I think
good
that's
advice.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Ella, what are your thoughts on...
Well, I've just come back from a little mini holiday in Devon where all the farmers are really panicked about the other side of it, that their crops are getting
too wet.
Yeah, it's too wet. So it's nice to have a little bit of I don't know whether this would factor into the whole kind of food security. I like the idea that securing English wine would be part of a food security.
We can't live on wine alone, can we? No.
But it is a central part.
Yeah, we can drink to forget, I guess. It's interesting how English winemaking is on the boom, though, because, of course, one of the things I'm always fascinated about was that during Roman times, we could abundantly grow wine because the climate was warmer. Maybe it's not about climate change. Maybe it was just warmer historically. A little bit of a diversion there. Ella.
But Europe is on fire, so, you know.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, yes.
Well, bits of roads off. It was arson. Anyway, Ella, fascinating story here. This is the war on the countryside oil boiler, which has been called the countryside Ules.
Yes, so we're sticking on the issue of warming or not so warm in the case of having to replace your oil boiler. So when Boris Johnson was in charge, there was, net zero was all the rage, and there was this plan put forward as part of the net zero package to have a ban on installation of new oil boilers from 2026. So that would mean you would have to, instead of having an oil boiler, be put in ground source heat pump, one of these things, something that was more eco-friendly. A big problem for people who... Not such a big problem for people who live in the cities, or they're still extremely expensive and all the rest of it. A very big problem for people who live in rural areas and off the grid. Obviously, this was a key... at the start, this was a key thing that Rishi Sunak was going on about net zero, said he was going to continue the legacy of being climate-friendly and blah, blah, blah. And after the recent by-elections with the kind of... round that's happening over ULEZ, the government seems to have had a change of heart and is now pointing out, which has been made a mockery of in some of the papers, that this wasn't ever a promise or a pledge, it was just a consultation. And that is true. It was a consultation that hasn't been answered yet. The submissions are in, and the government now has to decide what it does about this issue of oil boilers. In other papers, we have manufacturers coming forward and saying, can you please make a decision, because we don't know what to produce and what supply will be like. But it's interesting that, I think it's important to point out to viewers that this isn't because the government has necessarily had a change of heart in terms of the politics of environmentalism, but that, as the Telegraph points out, around 1 in 7 households in the constituencies of cabinet ministers are off the power grid, meaning they'll be affected by this. So there's a lot of this change of heart, particularly after the recent by-elections, is about winning elections, or about winning a future election, rather than actually the important things around the installation of boilers, which is that heat pumps, we know, aren't as effective, are more expensive, take up more space, take up more time, need your home to be insulated, which is very expensive, not something that most people out there, however eco-friendly they are, can afford. And
surprise, surprise, if potential Conservative voters are kicking up a stink to Tory MPs because they've got to pay a £10,000 tariff to have a new heat pump, there's been a bit of a backlash. It just seems so wrong-headed.
Well, the infrastructure's never there for the idea, is it? It's like electric cars. That's a fine idea if you've got enough places to charge them. If you don't have enough places to charge them for the amount of cars that you need, it's not going to work.
Susan, let's have a look at this story in the Mail, shall we? And this is about how an apology gift makes things worse.
Well, this is what they're claiming in the Mail. I'm not sure about that. I think what it says is, if you try and placate your partner with anything involving other than just the word sorry, it's a bad idea. Just say sorry, don't buy a gift. And the thinking for them, I think the person who's written it just doesn't want to buy anything. But the thinking is, it comes with bad vibes. It has a kind of guilt connotation, so the person isn't going to accept the gift or like the gift as much, and they probably will re-gift it or just throw it away. I don't know. I think if somebody's bothered to go and get a gift as part of their sorry, doesn't that mean that they are sorry, rather than... Words are easy, but if you've gone to get a gift... But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I've been on the receiving end of this a few times, having bought a kind of placatory, or so I thought, bunch of flowers, for example, misdemeanours such as not making it home that night. And I think... Misdemeanour. That's not just a misdemeanour. Well, so what I'm saying is, I think the bigger the gift, the bigger the crime. It shows you've got something to hide, and I just think it's a dead giveaway.
What did you hide?
Well, just add a few too many.
Yeah, we need to investigate this, I think, a bit more. But what did you buy?
Well, so here's another fatal error. Never buy an angry woman a bunch of flowers from Tesco.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Peel off the label at least.
I don't know, it's quite a good thing to thwack you with, though, isn't it? You get quite a good thwack from a kind of...
You can do better than that, Martin.
Yes, I can. I won't go there again.
What do you think, Ella? Apology gift make things worse?
I think probably I agree with Martin that it just solidifies the guilt, but it's also the case that, you know, as the flowers are sort of stood there in the jar and wilting, it would just remind me of how angry I was at you.
Yeah.
It would be if a box of chocolates, you eat them and it's done and everyone's happy, but it depends on...
So chocolate is the way to go.
Yeah, probably.
The flowers become a metaphor for the wilting love.
And also the partners, you know, the husbands never put...
Very poetic.
They never cut the flowers and put them in the jar. You've got to do all of that. It's just more work for you.
Yeah. Least said, soonest mended, possibly, is the truth of that, then, yeah.
Well, Ella, you're just talking about chocolate there. Let's stick on the theme of snacks, shall we? Because noisy snacks at the proms apparently leaving the audience members popping mad.
This is hilarious. I love this story. So at the proms at Royal Albert Hall, since 2014, they've sold popcorn, not any old popcorn, it's popcorn in beautiful glass containers. This is very proper for the proms, yeah. And sweets and crisps and all the rest of it. And people have been increasingly bringing them in, it appears. And the other night, right at the point at which, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, this is terrible, Francis Poulenc's Dialogues of the Carmelites, sorry to anyone who's not a Philistine like me, but that during the most sort of passionate moment of that performance where someone is singing a really beautiful thing, a fist went into a popcorn jar and 2 American tourists were rustling very loudly. But rather than ignoring it, a man who has been described as... You have to look this up, anyone at home.
This is brilliant.
A man described as resembling a posh Jean-Paul Gaultier began kicking the seat in front, using foul language and causing a real scene. And it became this big thing. And it sparked off this discussion, which is that should you be allowed to eat noisily in an opera? It's not quite like a cinema where there's a bit more of a sort of populist feel, but there needs to be absolute silence when someone's singing their aria or something like that.
I think they've got a point. Yeah. In fact, even at the cinema, I can't bear it. You know, if I go to a kids' matinee performance with my kids, I have to sit on the front row because I have to have all of that eating behind me because people are like delving into their crisps and they're stuffing them in, crunching, and I cannot bear.
People who eat smelly hot dogs in a cinema, what is that? Now, I have zero tolerance for any of that. If you go to the cinema, the theatre, I've never been to the opera, but clearly it's now got there, which is at least it shows that people are doing it everywhere. It's not just kind of us plebs at the cinema who are suffering from this. But I have no eating, no talking, no texting. No.
And watch out.
No singing along.
Watch out for a posh Jean-Paul Gaultier.
The references in the
I think I probably have to stand up for the fact that I remember being a teenager and going to the cinema on a date would be where you'd... You know, there might be a bit of knacking in the back row and some whispering and some, you know, rustling of popcorn, isn't that?
I think we'd put up with
Not that many teenagers go to the opera, so maybe that's not so much of a problem.
I think we'd put up with that. I mean, a bit of fumbling kind of in a back seat, I think I'd put up with more than people talking, texting and...
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about that. I think I'd rather someone was to be nibbling on popcorn than
nibbling
on each other.
Yeah.
Well, or a bit of both. I mean... Yeah, whatever floats your boat.
Not. Susan, let's move swiftly on, shall we?
Yes.
To the Daily Express. And Shakespeare's plays were nearly lost forever.
Yes. Now, this could kind of split the audience, I think, because I think some people love and respect Shakespeare and a lot of people would not care if they never saw anything to do with Shakespeare ever again. But I think people need to understand that Shakespeare obviously... lots of the phrases we use, lots of the language that's common actually comes from Shakespeare. And what this piece in the Daily Express explains really well, actually, is how during Shakespeare's life, all his plays were published as flimsy little kind of pamphlets. Yeah. That's all there was, obviously. And it wasn't until 7 years after his death in 1623 that 2 of his colleagues collected all the works together and put them in a bound copy. There were 750 copies made, and this is what's known as the first folio, which is incredibly famous. There are still 235 copies of that first folio in the world that we know of.
But they're worth a few quid on them.
They're worth millions. So one went for 7.84 million at Christie's in New York. So you're unlikely to find one like, on your shelves, but they are. But I do think it's really interesting that we could have lost all of that work. And even if you don't enjoy going and watching Shakespeare, and I know a lot of people don't, the themes and the stories from Romeo and Juliet to Midsummer Night's Dream to Macbeth, those are rewritten in kind of various ways by writers now. And I mean, I've taught drama for years. We did a rock and roll version of Romeo and Juliet, and the kids loved it. The stories are so strong that actually it is really quite shocking to think that we might have been denied all of that. That would have been incredible.
I had no idea you were so cultured.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, beautiful.
I hide it well, obviously.
Okie dokie, and we've got time for one more. Ella, in The Guardian, authors threaten book festival boycott over sponsors' links. Is this more fossil fuel stuff?
Well, going from the sort of high culture of the importance of Shakespeare and all the rest of it to a pretty sad state of affairs, which is that the Edinburgh Book Festival is sponsored by an investment company which, as part of its investments, is into fossil fuels. And a bunch of authors and attendees of the festival, including Zadie Smith, Gary Young and others, novelist Jessie Burton, have come together and said that we will boycott the festival next year if you don't encourage this investment firm to stop investing in fossil fuels. It's, it's a real kind of the sort of paying respects almost to Mother Earth in this sort of way of obsessing over climate change is a real kind of middle-class weakness, and particularly at a book festival it shows the sort of insubstantialness of it, which is that we know that we've just been having discussions about heat pumps and oil boilers. We know that the question around fossil fuels is not as black and white and good and evil as they make it out to be. It's a complicated issue of which you have to balance issues around the environment with issues of affordability and making sure that people have energy to heat their homes, run their cars, all the rest of it. And that, to reduce this down to a bunch of snooty authors saying they're not going to go back to a festival, I think shows you the tenor of this debate.
You think they'd be grateful for any money they got coming in these days? Anyway, we have to leave it there. Ella Whelan and Susan Holder. That was fantastic once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, renowned around the world for discovering and promoting the very best in the creative arts, the Edinburgh Festival is currently in full swing.
Well, let's go live now to GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, who joins us live from Edinburgh. Good morning to you, Tony. What can we expect this weekend?
Good morning, good morning. Well, a bit of a damp start, unfortunately, to the weekend, but we know that that isn't going to dampen any of the spirits of any of the acts and any of the festival goers this weekend. This is, of course, the world's biggest arts festival, and what a week for Scotland, going back to back with the world's biggest cycling event, just happening over the country in Glasgow. So the world's greatest and smallest, perhaps the world's most best known, as well as the completely undiscovered acts from all the creative sort of circles descend on Edinburgh to bring their shows to the world. So Edinburgh festivals, and especially the world famous Edinburgh Fringe, is really this culmination of around 5 or 6 festivals over the course of August, and Edinburgh absolutely balloons in size with the number of people coming in and out from abroad and from elsewhere around the UK to see the very best in comedy, theatre, dance, cabaret and everything in between. So you mentioned there about the book festival. That's kind of the biggest story really come out of the last couple of days, where we're seeing that authors are, really putting the screws to the book festival in order to kind of cut ties with this sponsor, unless that they give up on fossil fuels. But the majority of the spirited discussion here is really about comedy and is about people's shared experiences. Speaking to some of the acts earlier in the week, actually performing at the Fringe is a really sort of milestone in everyone's career, no matter how far up the ladder that they make it. Of course, the other week I was at the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo, and I know that some of the viewers will have seen the performances there. That is another huge stalwart of this month of August, as people come and see every manner from around the world, and what goes into creativity and culture from various parts of the globe, as well as the Edinburgh International Festival and the Film Festival putting on various screenings over the course of August as well to bring people together. So no matter what your passion is, there's going to be something here. Now, this weekend I'm going to be going around speaking to lots of different artists, be they comedians or dancers, quite a lot of Brits who have made the journey from around the country, as well as some groups and individuals from further afield as well, to really get a taste and to bring a taste to all our viewers back at home of what the Edinburgh Festivals is all about. Truly, it is a massive celebration of culture, of creativity, and of fun. And you know, of the 3,000 odd different shows this year, spread across 50,000 performances, selling out probably more than 2 million tickets if we base it on last year's figures. It's going to be an August to remember. But despite all that, 1,300 of those 3,000 shows are comedy, which shows that more than anything, we all still like a good laugh.
Oh, Tony, really good to see you this morning. I hope the sun comes out for you this weekend. It looks a bit grey and miserable up there in Edinburgh, but it's going to be a packed weekend, so really hope you enjoy it. Good to see you.
You're with Breakfast on GB News, Britain's new channel. Please stick with us. We have breaking news of a significant incident in the channel with Mark White. Stick around.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Dan Stroud and this is your latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. So this weekend, it's a weekend of sunny spells and blustery showers, all courtesy of this area of low pressure to the west. And that will be driving in bands of showers in off of the west during the course of Saturday. And some of these showers become locally heavy and potentially thundery in places. Further to the south and east, staying largely dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures generally fairly reasonable for the time of year, about average for mid-August, with highs of 23 or 22 across the south and east, a little bit chillier further north and west. So those showers continue uninterrupted during the course of Saturday evening, but further south and east, drier with some clear skies in the mix. Overnight temperatures dropping into the mid-teen category. Although these temperatures on the screen are the temperatures we're going to see in towns and cities, step out into the countryside and you can take a degree or so off of these values. So it's a bright start for many on Sunday morning, although those showers continue, although turning slightly less breezy. So any showers we do see will become increasingly slow moving as we move our way through the day. And temperatures again on Sunday around average for the time of year. Thank you for listening.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 12th of August. Today, rescued in the Channel. Dozens of migrants have been rescued in the English Channel after their small boat got into difficulties. We'll have all the latest for you in just a few moments.
And with home ownership slipping out of reach for millions and soaring rents, more and more people have chosen to become property guardians. But is it a good idea?
And it's finally happened. After intense speculation, England captain Harry Kane has signed with German club Bayern Munich.
Can't believe we're saying cheerio to Kano. Anyway, after a pleasant sunny day for many yesterday, what will the weather look like today? Here's Dan Stroud from the Met Office with more.
It is a weekend of sunny spells and showers, so keep those brollies to hand. To find out exactly where those showers will be, tune in to the latest forecast with me later.
Good morning, I'm Ellie Costello.
And I'm Mosin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, let's start this hour with this developing story in the Channel, where French authorities have confirmed that 54 migrants have been rescued after their small boat got into difficulties early this morning.
Dover Lifeboat and several French vessels were involved in the operation to rescue multiple people in the water about 5 miles off the French coast.
Well, our GB News Kent producer filmed these exclusive pictures at Dover Harbour as a number of people were taken off the Dover lifeboat on stretchers and transferred to waiting ambulances.
We're joined now by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Mark, what's the latest down there?
Well, certainly the authorities that were dealing with this incident at around 5 o'clock this morning were describing it as a major incident, a confirmation now that 54 Channel migrants were rescued from a small boat that got into difficulties. We don't know quite how many of them were in the water, but certainly a significant number, it would appear. And there were casualties. Our producer down in Kent, filming exclusively for us, filmed a number of people being taken off on stretchers. There were at least half a dozen ambulances and other paramedic vehicles that were waiting at Dover Harbour, as well as a number of Coast Guard and other agency vehicles as well. Now, this lifeboat was brought into an area called the Western Jetfoil, which is in Dover Harbour. That's the key, effectively, that these small boat daily crossings, when they occur, the migrants get taken to there, they get taken to the Border Force Processing Centre. So that's the area that is geared up to receive these people when they come in. So that's where the lifeboat and that Border Force support vessel, the Taku, headed to that French patrol vessel, I should say, the Taku, headed to with those on board. And as I say, our producer was filming as multiple people came off on stretchers, but others who had blankets around them were taken off, described as walking wounded. Now, those on board have been taken in ambulances to area hospitals. There is no update as yet from the authorities on their conditions. But this incident follows a number of rescues in the Channel this week, because although conditions in the Channel have improved a bit, they're still less than ideal. And this morning especially, we had some fairly high waves in the Channel with 20-mile-an-hour southwesterly winds blowing through the Channel. Yesterday, the French authorities reported that they had to rescue 116 migrants of 3 boats that got into difficulty in French waters. And then, of course, on Thursday, there was this dramatic rescue off the Kent coast in which 4 lifeboats were involved in picking up 17 people who had ended up in the water.
Mark, can you explain to our viewers this morning why an incident that happened 4 miles off the French coast, and that's significantly, of course, nearer to France on the 21-mile expanse? My understanding was that if things happen past the halfway mark, it was the responsibility of British vessels. Why did the British vessels go so far into French territory?
Well, it's certainly unusual. I don't know of this happening very often. You're right. If incidents happen sort of mid-channel, then it kind of, you know, whoever can get to port the quickest will dispatch, and it might end up in a French port or a UK port. But normally, if they are clearly demarked as being in French waters, they would head to French ports, as indeed the 116 who were rescued yesterday of 3 small boats were taken to French ports. We know that the Dover lifeboat attended this incident. Now, that's a very fast craft. It might well have been that the decision was taken because they had the most seriously injured casualties on board that vessel, that they're quicker, that Dover is a harbour. They know that they had these emergency service vehicles staging at Dover harbour. They maybe just made the decision quick time to get it to Dover. That, I'm sure, will come out in the fullness of time. But you're right, Martin, it is unusual for an incident unfolding clearly within French waters for those casualties to be brought to Dover. But they have been, as I say, a full emergency operation that swung into operation very early in the morning at Dover Harbour. They're used to it. They role-play an exercise for this, and sadly, all too often these days, they have to deal with incidents in the Channel that turn very scary and sometimes tragic in terms of loss of life. So they're very used to that. And again, it seems from what we could see, certainly from the Dover end, to have been a textbook operation in the way that they responded. What happened on the French side, we still await answers to.
But Mark, this is a reminder, isn't it, of just how treacherous that journey can be?
Well, it is, and we know that there has been a change in the design of these boats by the people smugglers in recent weeks. And these new, bigger boats with more people on board, we told were in a response, it seems, to the fact that the other vessels, and some of them, of course, are still in use as well, were much more flimsy in nature, with plywood floors that had a tendency in strong waves to rip apart. So the whole boat now, the floor of the vessel, is this rubber, which we're told is a bit more robust. Whether that is the case, I don't know, but it has meant that the boats have been a bit larger. The numbers coming across have been larger because you've been getting over the last year around about the late 40s to early 50s in terms of the numbers on these boats. But now, because the people smugglers have upped the spec, if you like, on these boats, they're cramming 60, 70, even 80 people on these boats. Now, that is a major concern just in and of itself. But it comes, this whole incident today comes at the end of what has been, without a doubt, a disastrous week for the government. This was supposed to be a week in which They had launched a campaign. They wanted to make this the Small Boats Week. Well, it certainly turned into that, but for all the wrong reasons. The government wanted to show us what they were doing to stop the boats, with the Bibi Stockholm initiative, with also the deal that they'd hatched with Turkey as well to go after the people smugglers. But what do you get? Dramatic rescue operations in the Channel. On Thursday, an unmanned aerial drone from Border Force crashed into the sea. A Border Force vessel broke down. And then just yesterday, all of the issues around the Bibi Stockholm after this Legionella outbreak that was discovered in the water system there, and the 39 people who'd gone on the Bibi Stockholm, with all the controversy and the anger expressed by those human rights groups and the lawyers representing the migrants, well, those migrants have been taken back off again until this Legionella bacteria has been dealt with. So it could be several weeks before they're back on again.
Home Security Editor, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on that breaking news in the Channel, on that developing story. 54 migrants have been rescued from the Channel after a major incident this morning. So thank you to Mark for bringing us up to speed on that. We're joined now by Charlie Rowley in the studio. Charlie, what do you make of those scenes in the Channel early this morning?
Well, the first thing to say is that it highlights just how perilous and treacherous that journey is for people that are making it from Calais to Dover in craft that is clearly not adequate, not fit for purpose. It's dangerous. And at the hands of criminal gangs that missell the life and the dream of a life in the UK, those are the people who are absolutely responsible. And we should do all that we can to target those, to disrupt those criminal gangs, to stop people getting onto those boats in the first place, and to stopping people coming into this country.
Yeah, and while, of course, the safety of anybody involved in this is paramount, Charlie, we must remember that in March, Rishi Sunak gave £500 million to the French to precisely stop this kind of thing, departures from the shores in small boats. I'm particularly intrigued about why the British Coast Guard went so deep into French waters and then brought these casualties back to Dover. Maritime law, we were always led to believe, were if it happens past the halfway mark, then it became a British responsibility. I think there'll be big questions about that. But also the bigger question is, if we're spending £500 million preventing this and it's not working, are we just throwing good money after bad?
Well, I think the first question is absolutely right. I think people want to know why something that happened just a few miles off France has led to the UK, and now Border Force and our vessels sort of bringing people into the UK. And it may be, as Mark was saying earlier on, that we've just got better equipment. We've got the better vessels.
£500 million can buy some good equipment. Surely that's what this money's for.
Well, I'm sure it can. But you would hope also that, you know, with all the numbers of people that we're hearing about coming into this country, I think what the government now needs to do to try and reclaim the narrative and to get back onto the front foot is to tell the public how many of these vessels have been stopped. Yes, OK, the numbers of people coming into this country illegally through these means does seem to be going up. But I'm sure that there's an awful lot of work that's taken place between the UK and the French authorities to make sure that we've prevented however many more thousands of people making that journey, or how many we've disrupted, how many have been stopped. I think that's what the government now needs to sort of tell us in order to reclaim the narrative of what has been clearly a very difficult week.
Charlie, let's get your response to the Bibi Stockholm barge in Dorset. The 39 migrants on board that barge have been moved off it after traces of Legionella bacteria were found in the water supply on that barge. As Mark was just referring to, it is Small Boats Week. The government was hoping to make a series of announcements this week that would make them look like they're on top of that pledge to stop the boats. It's very embarrassing for the government, isn't it?
Well, I think with the Bibi Stockholm situation, there will always be contingency plans in place. So should there be an outbreak of a disease within the barge, obviously this is something that's been detected even before it had reached capacity. So the Home Office have done absolutely the right thing to disembark everybody from the barge and to make sure that they're now undertaking all that they need to make sure that it is clean, that it is safe, that it's appropriate to put people back on. So the Home Office have done the right thing to take people off. But you're absolutely right. Questions will be asked as to why these tests weren't done prior to anybody getting on board, and what was the information or the communication chain between people that had done those checks and balances, what information the Home Office knew before presenting the decision to ministers to actually give the green light in the first place. So it may be the case that if you're the minister, if you're Robert Jenrick, if you're the Home Secretary, you might have been given all the assurances before you gave the green light. Now it's come to light that all of those checks and balances might not have been done, or the tests were taken, but the results hadn't been produced until yesterday or whatever it was. And so, it's a problem. But the government have done the right thing to get people off, and they need to sort out the barge before people can go back on.
Well, Charlie, the 100,000 mark of illegals coming into the country was breached this week. £3 million thrown to Turkey doesn't seem to have done much. Now the Bibby Stockholm is the only boats that they've managed to stop. Now this major incident in the Channel. Mark White put it there. It's been a disastrous week for the Conservatives. Would you agree?
Well, it's certainly highlighted Small Boats Week. We're talking
That's
about.
a yes.
It's. Look, I think there are. But I think it highlights the problem that the government have got, and what it continues to reinforce what it's doing to stop the small boats. So you have to have not just one thing in isolation. So Bibby Stockholm on its own is not going to stop the small boats coming over. You need to have the disruption of the criminal gangs. You need to have the working partnership with the French authorities to increase the border patrols, to stop people coming into the shores even before they depart Calais. You need to make sure you've got enough people processing the backlog of claims that there are in this country to make sure that those that are seeking asylum and have a genuine need to be in this country are granted that, and those that are not are deported to Rwanda, another issue that we have in the court. So all of that as a package together, and yes, it's costly, but there is a huge cost at the moment of £6 million a day to house people in hotels. There's a huge cost to communities and social cohesion and now tensions that we're seeing, whether it's in Knowsley, whether it's in Portland, or whether it's in Llanelli in Wales. We're seeing that community tension. But all of that package put together that I've just outlined needs to happen in order to reduce the pull factor, to reduce the number of people coming to this country in the long run. And I think, once you get on top of that, we will start to see an improvement.
Well, Charlie Rowley, I admire your optimism. Thanks for joining us today on GB News.
I'm always optimistic.
Yes, we love seeing you, Charlie. Thank you. Now, recently, we've been inundated with stories about the challenging housing and rental market across the nation, as millions struggling to either afford a house or somewhere decent to rent.
And that's why more and more people have chosen to become guardians of the house. It could be much cheaper, but with strings attached.
Well, joining us now is Managing Director at Live-In Guardians, Arthur Duke. Good morning to you, Arthur. What is a property guardian?
Property guardian, good morning. A property guardian is a young professional key worker that will place into an empty property to protect it from squatting.
Normally, this was something people did for a bit of a break or to kind of see how other people live, but increasingly, this is becoming something that people are doing through financial necessity. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, we've seen a 60% increase year on year of applications for people to become property guardians. And when we started the business 14 odd years ago, we were looking at an average age of between 25 and 35 for the property guardians. However, this has risen recently, anywhere between 25 and 55, although we do have one guardian who is our oldest guardian, who is 71 years old.
Well, one of the downfalls must be, Arthur, that the owner of the house could come back at any time.
No, we will enter into a contract with the property owner, so we will know, the minimum period that we are likely to be required. Our minimum is 3 months in London and 6 months out of London.
Wow, so that's actually a huge saving. 6 months in a London property, that's a massive amount of money to save. So this is quite a lucrative thing to pursue. How do you go about getting involved?
Well, that's the hard bit, is to try and find the properties. In terms of guardians, we have a waiting list, a database of about 28,000 people currently who are applying to become guardians. So obviously the demand is massively outstripping the supply.
There'll be some amazing properties on your books.
Sorry, say that again?
There must be some amazing properties that you deal with.
Yeah, we've got all sorts of properties from old schools, churches, pubs, stately homes we have as well. So a nice array of properties for the Guardians to live in, and generally they get lots and lots of space to live in.
And is the idea that they also help to look after the properties? If there's any maintenance that needs doing, or maybe watering the plants and that sort of thing, would you be expected to do that?
Well, we have our own in-house maintenance team, so any maintenance issues we fix very quickly. But yes, they will be asked to water the plants or cut the lawns and do their bit.
Now, my favourite House Guardian moment is Man versus Bee. You know, the Mr. Bean video where he stays and he completely destroys a classic car, he destroys the home. Do you ever get into a situation where people staying in a property cause damage and end up being out of pocket?
Not really, because it's their home and that's where they live, albeit temporarily. So it's not really in their interest to, smash the place up or destroy it. And generally, we hand properties back in a better condition than we receive them in.
Great, superb. OK, Arthur Duke, Managing Director, Live-In Guardians. Thanks for joining us today on GB News Breakfast.
Thank you very much. We've got you all going on potholes this morning. Yeah. Teresa asks, is there a stronger road surface? We should be looking for that nationwide. Karen says potholes are deliberately not repaired so the drivers will slow down or not drive at all.
And we did a story about apology gifts in the newspaper review. If you want to say sorry to your partner, is it a good idea? Andy and Dorset, I like this. Never say sorry. It's a sign of weakness.
No.
Tough love there from Andy.
No, that's not the way forward. Mel says just humbly apologise and admit when you've been a silly one, and a big hug to finish, problem solved.
Smile emoji. There you go, Mel, you've got it. But Andy and Dorset hardline, never, ever apologise.
Yeah, and just a few on holiday stress. We were talking about summer holidays actually causing anxiety for a lot of us. Janet says she gets stressed when they go on holiday because she hates leaving her cat behind. Amy in Fife, though, says, what is wrong with people? They strip the joy out of everything. Holidays with your family is away from work. Before the kids go back to school, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, and finally, on the topic of Channel migrants and the major incident we're reporting on, breaking news there from Mark White. Guy says, why are they being brought to Dover when they were just off the coast of France? This is beyond a joke. The RNLI are definitely a taxi service. Strong words there from Guy.
We'll keep those views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com. More to come, though, including the latest on Harry Kane's move to Bayern Munich. This is Breakfast on GB News.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Dan Strout and this is your latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. So this weekend, it's a weekend of sunny spells and blustery showers, all courtesy of this area of low pressure to the west. And that will be driving in bands of showers in off of the west during the course of Saturday. And some of these showers become locally heavy and potentially thundery in places. Further to the south and east, staying largely dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures generally fairly reasonable for the time of year, about average for mid-August, with highs of 23 or 22 across the south and east, a little bit chillier further north and west. So those showers continue uninterrupted during the course of Saturday evening, but further south and east, drier with some clear skies in the mix. Overnight temperatures dropping into the mid-teen category. Although these temperatures on the screen are the temperatures we're going to see in towns and cities, step out to the countryside and you can take a degree or so off of these values. So it's a bright start for many on Sunday morning, although those showers continue, although turning slightly less breezy. So any showers we do see will become increasingly slow moving as we move our way through the day. And temperatures again on Sunday around average for the time of year. Thank you for listening.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin.
Yeah, now after 20 years of coverage, Sky will no longer broadcast the Oscars in the UK.
Yes, reports suggest that the broadcaster's decision to forego the rights to the popular American awards show was rooted in tumbling viewing figures. We're going to be talking about that shortly with our Showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tecci. But first, let's get a sports roundup with Aidan McGee. And Aidan, big news, Harry Kane, he's off. It's official.
Absolutely, Ellie, yes. Bayern Munich have tweeted and they published on Instagram this morning that he is indeed a Bayern Munich player. An extraordinary video as well that they've released. It's a little bit racially stereotypical in some ways if you want to flip it on its head, but I suppose it's a good sign of a German sense of humour. But let's take a look at the video now because they put this on their social platforms in the last 40 minutes or so, and I think you'll agree it's an extraordinary video.
And action.
I think that's great. Who said the Germans didn't have a sense of humour?
I know, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's I worked out he might be 007. 007, I think.
I like it. I like it. A bit of culture
fantastic.
there.
So, yeah, £96.4 million, including add-ons. I mean, he released a video of his own on Instagram just before that. We can see the pictures now for the benefit of our radio listeners. That's him with the number 9 shirt, the number 9 worn by Robert Lewandowski, as well as lots of other famous Bayern Munich names from the past. And this is a great move for him. I really think that. You know, he wasn't going to win a trophy at Tottenham. He's been trying for a long, long time. He's gone to a club that wins trophies every season. They've won 11 Bundesligas in a row. They will now have a real big chance, I would think, next year of claiming the Champions League. And now a super club in European terms. They are a legacy club. Anybody thinking he's made the wrong decision going there, I think they need to have more of an understanding of world football.
Yeah, and the fact that video was clearly scripted and pre-made shows that Kano, at least, and the club have known for some days this was going ahead while we've been kept in the dark.
We wrote off Bayern Munich, you know, fairly quickly. 10 days ago, their officials arrived in England and arrived in London to do the deal. They did not go home until they got Harry Kane. And that's exactly what happened. He flew there yesterday for his medical. There's a chance that if they get him registered by 2 o'clock, which I think is eminently possible, that he may play tonight in the German Super Cup against RB Leipzig. That's their equivalent of the Community Shield. So we could even see him in a Bayern Munich shirt on the pitch this evening. But as I say, 280 goals in 435 games. He's done his bit for Tottenham. And this is, you know, yes, he's getting outside of England, and that's where Tottenham want him. They don't want him coming back with another English club and causing embarrassment to them. And it sees Tottenham realise some value for a player who came through the ranks at Tottenham. He has produced extraordinary numbers for them over a consistent period of time. He's become the England captain, 58 goals at international level, and I don't think they wanted to see him walk out of the club next summer for free.
No, and there's also, am I right in saying there's a picture been released of him in a Bayern Munich shirt? That's
we've seen it. We showed it a few minutes ago.
That's going to hurt a lot of Spurs fans, I think, because I think they were still wishing and willing this away.
Yeah, they were, but Ange Postecoglou, their newly appointed manager, he was appointed about a month ago, having arrived from Celtic. He has said, I've been preparing for life without Harry Kane. He didn't play in the Barcelona friendly a few days ago, when it wasn't really a reason given for his absence, and so that was a little bit peculiar. So we kind of knew that was when the situation tipped over the edge. We kind of knew he was going to go then, and after that it was about getting the terms right, getting the personal terms right. It's £600,000 a year, a week he's going to be earning. So I mean, who wouldn't go for that money to play for a club like that?
Let's get back to the Premier League. Kicked off last night. Man City mullered Burnley 3-0.
They did, yeah, indeed. It was a fairly comfortable 3 minutes it took Erling Haaland to get back on the scoring trail. He had the longest run without a goal, this is by his standards, that he'd had in club football in 5 years. But they win 3-0 last night. Bit of a blow, though. They lose Kevin De Bruyne in the first half, a recurring hamstring injury, and that's worrying to me because he's 32 years old. And if the injury keeps coming back, and don't forget he was forced off in the Champions League final against Inter Milan back in early June, and I think that's a bit of a worry because Pep Guardiola said afterwards that it's happened again. And when an injury just keeps flaring up, and it's a hamstring injury, you don't recover from hamstring injuries in a matter of days anymore. It takes weeks and weeks to get wrong, depending on the grade of the tear. So that's a blow for them. However, if you look at Burnley's point of view, extremely tough opening assignment. And as with Nottingham Forest, who go to Arsenal today, their season isn't going to be defined on results against the top sides.
Yeah, Arsenal, of course, beat Man City. You could call it a bit of a last-minute dramatic, but nevertheless, they're the two teams to watch, aren't they?
Oh, without doubt, yeah. I mean, I think, Arsenal today lining up with Declan Rice in their lineup. Bit of a blow that they don't have Gabriel Jesus, but they'll be expecting to beat Nottingham Forest today, I would think. And then
don't write off the tricky trees.
I'm not writing anybody off. It's too early for that.
You had to get that in there.
You did have to get it in.
Women's World Cup, Aidan. We're playing today, aren't we?
11:30 against Colombia. Pressure on England, Ellie. No question about that. They're 21 places above Colombia in the world rankings, and with the absence of Canada, USA, Germany, and Brazil, England are now the favourites. I would have had them as favourites anyway, to be honest with you, because they went to Australia as the European champions. There's no inferiority complex there whatsoever. And there's a real chance now, even without Lauren James, who's going to be out for 2 matches, which would include today and the semi-final if they get there, but could be back for the final if England were to advance that far. But if they win today, I think England have got a strong chance anyway, to be honest with you. But they're going to have to do it without Lauren James. But we can't write off Colombia. They knocked out Germany in the group stages. And so, but having said that, I think all eyes on England now.
And you're calling it, your cheeky little tip, 2-1 England?
Yes, yeah, but only remind me if I get it right, OK? That's the deal.
I'm going to get a few quid on that, Aid. I'll hold you to that, mate.
And the boxing, should we talk about AJ?
Yeah, so we had the upheaval at the start of the week when Dillian Whyte returned an adverse analytical finding, which in layman's terms means he failed a drugs test, a voluntary drugs test. So that rematch from 2015 isn't going to happen. They quickly had to get a contender in, the Nordic Nightmare, Martin Helenius. He's from Iceland.
Good nickname.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not sure how good he is. 36 fights, 32 wins, but that's not, who's he fought? Not very much. He lost to Dillian Whyte recently. I don't think he's caused too many leading contenders many nightmares, to be honest with you. But it keeps the show on, though. That's the thing.
And the last time they brought in a so-called outsider against Joshua, he floored him.
Oh, without doubt. I mean, no, that's a good point. I mean, 2019, Andy Ruiz Jr. was brought in and, I mean, he floored him 4 times.
He did.
And it was an extraordinary win. And so, I mean, he did fight a rematch and Ruiz didn't win that one, but it went in points. Joshua, that fight changed the trajectory of Anthony Joshua's career. He became a different fighter. He became more withdrawn. He didn't come out swinging us off and he didn't attack. And that's derailed his career. I think the psychological damage at that Ruiz fight has really damaged him. And I think he's got to produce a statement performance tonight, something decent which will get the mouth-watering for a potential fight against Deontay Wilder. But Deontay Wilder, who got a bit of rebuilding to do himself because he was schooled 3 times by Tyson Fury, or 2 times certainly out of 3. And boxing needs something now because the big fights haven't been happening recently.
Is there any chance of an upset from the Nordic Nightmare?
No, I don't see it. I really don't. He's 39 years old. You know, Eddie Hearn will talk him up and say, you know, he's a credible opponent. He's coming to fight. If Anthony Joshua loses this tonight, this is the end of his career. But that won't happen.
Can I just say, though, you actually did have this one wrong, because you said it would
I didn't get anything wrong.
You said it would be Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, I know.
Who did you...
Derek Chisora.
That's it.
Yeah. I thought it would be, but...
What happened there?
Well, what happened there?
Well done, you got him there.
You have. No, Chisora's fought very recently.
Right.
And so it's probably a little bit unfair to throw him in the ring straight away. And he's a bit of a flat-track bully. I thought it would happen because... Joshua was one of the only opponents in his era that Chisora hasn't fought. And I thought he's local and he would get the gig. And for some reason he hasn't. And I think it's because he fought fairly recently and wasn't in the position to do it. Maybe Anthony Joshua didn't fancy it. But I'm not sure we'll see that fight now. Not that anyone particularly wants to see it, because I don't rate Chisora as a fighter. He's quite fun when he comes to the ring, but he's a flat-track bully. He only beats those who are ranked significantly lower than him.
OK.
So sorry I got that wrong.
No worries, but we'll remind you.
You're only human, Aidan McGee.
Oh, good.
It's a rarity, but thanks for joining us again.
Someone told me.
Oh, favourite sandwich thing? And do you have an odd one?
I nearly opened a sandwich shop once, actually.
Did you?
I did, yeah. I like brisket of beef with mustard, coleslaw and a dash of mango chutney.
Yeah, but that's quite orthodox. I mean, it's got a bit of a twist, but it's orthodox.
Brisket of beef, it takes 12 hours to cook.
We're talking about psycho sarnies.
Oh, I'm not sure I'm into psycho.
So weird things. So baked bean sandwich. We've had tuna and pineapple. We've had all sorts of... We've had
I had an idea for a sandwich shop.
Chinese takeaway sandwich.
Based on a very successful one in Bromley. And the only retail outlet I could find 2 years ago that was under 15 grand a year was next door to the one that's been really successful. So it was a non-starter.
That was that one.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, do keep your weird and wacky sandwiches coming in. Your favourite flavours, please. gbviews@gbnews.com. Do stay with us, though. Lots more to come, including all of the latest showbiz gossip with our very own Stephanie Tecci. That's next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, the big read, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. It's time for Showbiz now. We're joined by our lovely Stephanie. Good morning to you. And you're going to talk to us about the Oscars because Sky has pulled out of broadcasting.
Yeah, so Sky have had the rights to broadcast the Oscars in the UK over the last 20 years. So it's just a done deal for them every year. They would screen, broadcast the Oscars. But now, as due to the economic climate, a lot of broadcasters are thinking, where can they make cuts? Where can they save money? But also, it's about the Oscars have lost their kind of glamour with a lot of viewers. At its peak in 1998, Ellie, it had about 57 million viewers tune in to watch Titanic scoop all those awards they did in that year. Wow. And then last year, it dwindled down to 35 million. And that was the year before. It had about 60 million viewers. So it's been going down steadily year by year. So, you know, for broadcasters to think, why are we going to invest in this? And I think a lot of awards have received criticism because it's like either they've gone too woke, either you've got the introduction of gender-neutral categories. So it's just made Oscars and other award shows become like a political bait, which is not supposed to be.
Yeah, I think the world's smallest violins for the Oscars, to be honest, because, I mean, you know, 4 hours of multimillionaires telling the whole world they're racist, transphobic, or aren't doing enough about climate change when they kind of clear off on their private jets back to their little islands. I think they completely deserve this, don't you reckon?
It takes away from what show business is supposed to be about. Show business is supposed to be about awarding the talent for either their performances, either in movies, or even the production teams behind all these big blockbusters that we watch. But what's happened now is that it has become a tick-boxing exercise. You know, when I think about the Oscars, it's been around for almost 80 years. At the beginning, you used to have the true Hollywood stars who would be, you know, actually being awarded for, you know, the hard work they've done. But now, as we saw in 2022 in the Oscars with the Will Smith slapgate...
I can't believe that's been a year.
Yes, and it's taken over the headlines from what the awards are supposed to be about. So I do worry whether we will, in the future, be having any ceremonies which will still have the respect and the prestige that they deserve.
Or do you think it will go full circle and once we come out of this movement, whatever we're in now, and it will come back to the awards ceremony that we know and love?
I don't think so, Ellie. I think audiences are too awake now. I think we're too opinionated as a society that we're very much more aware of what we're being fed, especially when it comes to award shows. And I think viewers are just losing interest now.
Yeah, and I think that epic Ricky Gervais speech, that was the Golden Globes, wasn't it? Not the Oscars. But nevertheless, when he completely harpooned the pomposity of Hollywood.
I've never seen celebrities look so uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that was the best thing about it, the fact he was totally lambasting, you know, the kind of hypocrisy of what they stand for. They're some of the most privileged people on earth telling us that we should all feel ashamed of our existences.
Tom Hanks's face was a picture, wasn't it?
Yeah, Aidan Bagistu here.
Yeah.
Don't you think, though, Aidan, this is the classic example of go woke, go broke? Nobody wants to buy it because it's just a huge lecture.
Well, I get back. We see it in football all the time. You know, all the politics drifting into sport that we've had over the last 5 years or so, especially in tandem with the broadcasters as well. It's no different to what we've seen in Hollywood. And politics and showbiz, I suppose you could say, mixes a little bit. Politics and sport. It's there, it's inextricably linked, but you don't encourage it. That's a bad thing to encourage it, and it always ends in tears.
But I think, you know, when people are in the limelight, they always do feel like they've got a voice and they should use it. They feel like they've got influence. But I think when it comes to celebrity culture, there's always this love-hate relationship with it these days.
It makes you believe the whole thing is just a huge smokescreen for the fact they earn millions and millions of pounds. They just don't want to. They want to appear virtuous at the same time.
Aren't you fascinated by celebrities, though, Martin, and their lifestyles, or is it a bit of a turn-off?
I'm fascinated by their hypocrisy. That's what I think. I'm not
fascinated by their politics.
No. Interesting.
Steph, talk to us about Ali G.
Ali G. Well, we know comedy at the moment is a very sensitive area. Comedy can no longer be comedy. And Sacha Baron Cohen, funnily enough, now he wants to bring back one of his most controversial characters, Ali G. He's well known, well loved. The last time he was saw on the screens was like over 10 years ago. He's done the odd stint here and there, but now he's about 51 years old and he wants to bring Ali G back. He wants to do a tour, which would be interesting. I think it might be more safer for him to do a tour rather than be on TV, because I think at the moment, as we've seen with a lot of comedy material, it can be deemed offensive. And with his character, it was always seen that it was mocking black street culture. So I don't know, you know, if he could get away with it now, but we do need more comedy. And I think we should allow comedy to be comedy and, you know, take the politics out of it.
It's funny because Ali G was one of the last great politically incorrect comedy creations. I mean, when I was on Loaded magazine, it was the #1 sort of comedy role model of all the young lads up and down the country. They'd recite the phrases, endlessly, "Is it because I black?" and all that. And it was absolutely a parody of that. But would it stand the test of time, is what I'm saying? Would he be allowed to be that politically incorrect now? Because since then, he's gone incredibly woke. And
if it's a new script, it'll be neutered. But my question would be, how long before it may have even started happening, go back 20 years or whatever, I think it was late 90s it first started appearing, wasn't it? I wonder if a bit like Only Fools and Horses, you see the scripts adapted and kind of, toned down a bit for a new audience. I think it's only a matter of time. It may have even happened already.
But if it's not Ali G and it's Ali PC, I think it'd be absolutely terrible.
Well, I think when it comes to comedy, is like, if you like those kind of laughs, go see the shows. If you know you're sensitive, then stay away from it. Because I think for comedians, they've got a job to do, and I don't think it's fair that they are watered down or the PC police come after them. But I think for Ali G, it's quite all about nostalgia, so I can imagine he will attract that audience that grew up watching him on Channel 4.
I wonder if Sacha Baron Cohen feels that pressure or feels nervous about creating comedy in today's world, because it's changed so much, hasn't it, since Ali G?
I think you have to be quite thick-skinned now if you're a comedian. You have to know that the criticism is going to come and you have to be aware of it, but at the same time, you have to read the room, and you don't want to get your career being cancelled over saying something wrong, which is sometimes I find a bit ridiculous.
OK, Stephanie, Aidan, stay with us. We're going up to Edinburgh now.
Yeah, because renowned around the world for discovering and promoting the very best in the creative arts, the Edinburgh Festival is currently in full swing.
Let's go live to GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, who's there for us this morning to tell us more. Tony, what can we expect from this weekend?
Well, another weekend full of adventure for really anybody who's coming to some of the 3,000 plus shows. Now, to say that it's in full swing might be a bit of a stretch. It is before 10 a.m. and, the performing at the Fringe takes quite a strain on the performers. I imagine the bars and clubs were pretty packed out last night, and with the first shows beginning around just after 10, 11 o'clock this morning, we can imagine at that point we can finally say that the Fringe is in full swing. But indeed, this is the biggest arts festival in the world, a culmination of multiple festivals celebrating film, international arts and culture, as well as the very best of comedy, cabaret at the Fringe. Now, I'm here in Bristol Square. This is one of the real central hubs where some of the massive venue suppliers such as Pleasance, Gilded Balloon and Underbelly kind of the pouring out of the shows. The public will come here for a cheeky pint and before diving into the next venue. Certainly certainly, if we gauge this year's success by anything like last year, you know, we're looking at around 2 million tickets sold for those 3,000 shows, and indeed something like 53,000 performances over the entirety of August. Now, so that's quite an impressive number, and obviously that takes some amount of strain on the performers. You know, in the last 24 hours, we actually had a performer cancel his show because, you know, it is difficult for some of the smaller performers, and certainly Mark McAdams is 49. He ended up just cancelling the end of his run because nobody was there to watch. So it's a tough gig, but certainly for those that can make it work and for those who can really get into the festival spirit here in the festival city, then there's a lot to be gained from that. Another thing I'll just quickly point out is that this year's festival, I've noticed, is quite a political flavour in quite a lot of various venues around the city. Already this month we've seen the likes of Humza Yousaf, Nicola Sturgeon, Penny Mordaunt, and various other politicians from across the United Kingdom speaking at shows, and you know, quite often these are a big sellout. So interesting trend for this year so far, but I'm looking forward to later this afternoon. We're going to speak to some national and international artists, and hopefully over this weekend give our audience a real flavour of what the Edinburgh festivals have to offer.
There's lots to look forward to, and I hope the sun comes out for you there in Edinburgh. Thanks so much.
Okay, back to the studio now. Steph, you're still with us.
Yeah.
Talking about Ed Sheeran. Apparently he's got the hump about AI.
Yeah, because as every industry now, the big talk is how artificial intelligence is going to be replacing people's jobs, and how, you know, most industry bosses are saying it could be more of a support. And in the music industry now, we're seeing that people who've passed on, even their lyrics can be recited by AI. It's all been changed, but Ed Sheeran's come out and criticised it because he says, in society is about giving people jobs, and now we're seeing AI take over these jobs. He says he just finds it all weird, and he would not be up for his music in the future being kind of taken over by AI. And I do agree with him. I do think there has to be a limit on how all AI needs to be safeguarded in that sense, where people's art can still stay intact and people can still have jobs.
Yeah, it's good on someone like Ed Sheeran to make a stand, isn't it? Because we are seeing that now, aren't we? The artists who have left us, it's down to their estate to decide what happens. It gets murky, doesn't it?
And, you know, as we're seeing with the Hollywood strikes, there's nothing in place at the moment where there's laws where people's art and people's work can be protected. So I think we're going to be seeing more of these conversations happening in the music industry and within the creative arts.
I wonder if, though, talk about the kind of wokeness of modern celebrity, if we could bring back the dead, you know, through AI. Let's have a bit of AI Tupac, you know, a bit of you know, AI Joe Strummer, a bit
There's
of punk
no
rock.
limits.
You know, let's bring back the dead, because the modern lot just moan about everything.
What do you think about that, though? Do you think morally that's right?
I think it would be an incredible thing. Like we've seen with ABBA, you know, with ABBA Voyage. You know, that's basically AI, but of course they're alive and they've given consent.
Yeah,
but,
so that's different.
Yeah.
Like someone like Amy Winehouse, for example. I've loved to have seen her live. I don't know how I feel morally about her being brought back in AI.
Well, it would be down to the family, won't it? The people who run the estate. They'll probably give their permission. They'll know how their relatives felt about it. I mean, no, give it a go. It won't be everyone's cup of tea.
It just all comes down to money, sadly.
If you mess them up, if you put out of it, that'll change.
Yeah.
But you know that they're doing the unreleased Beatles single because they got a Lennon vocal. They put it through AI and they've made it sound perfect. I think the eyes are going to be on the video for that, because what if they have an AI John Lennon with the band now, so he effectively seems alive? I think that could be an incredible moment where one of the most revered yet deceased rock and roll stars of all time could be brought back to life through AI. I would love to see that.
I think it would be fascinating to see. I just think now it's like people are just going a bit too far. I just think, you know, to the point where I find it, for me, it'll be a bit scary seeing someone who's died being brought back to life in AI on stage. I think that doesn't sit right with me.
Well, I think it'd be great.
We've been talking about holiday stress this morning. We were talking about it earlier. Essentially, Brits are very anxious about going on holiday for a variety of reasons. I've got some views in this morning. Dan in Nottingham, good morning to you, says, I find the most stressful things about holidays is the profiteering from the holiday companies. I like to take the family because obviously there's no good weather guarantee in the UK, but I know we could save over £1,000 if you take off those extra charges, taking a suitcase, and all of that sort of jazz. Do you get holiday anxiety?
Yes, I do, but I only get it at the airport. I think the airport is the part which I just do not like, just having to go through passport control, security. But to be honest, I'm just glad that COVID is over, because I found travelling through the pandemic and not knowing what the different laws are and what you would need in terms of tests and vaccines. So things have got better now, but it seems like we're not quite there.
I remember getting to Gdansk 2 years ago for the Europa League final. So I was my cameraman was a little bit kind of overzealous getting there 6 hours before. I said, goodness me, we're going to have to wait around Gdansk airport for ages. But it's actually turned out to be the right decision, because we had to queue up and get COVID tests, and we just about made our flight. And that's what I call anxiety. And a friend of mine from the Sun, a guy called Charlie Wyatt, came up to me and said to me, why on earth this summer 2021, would you want to take your kids through this? I said, we're OK, we're individuals, we can kind of put up with it. But why would you volunteer your family of 2 or 3 kids to go and have a holiday like that with all this is going on? It just seemed like madness. I mean, that to me was true anxiety. Hopefully it's dissipated now.
Fair point. And Steph, we talked quickly earlier about Harry being forgiven and welcomed back into the fold. Well, it seems nobody agrees with you on this.
I've been getting a Twitter backlash.
Dave says no return without public apologies. May in Sheffield, to be honest, I'm sick about hearing them every 5 minutes. Pat says, I would love to see Harry back in the fold, though. So he does agree with you. He is a man in love and has a family. He cannot be asked to choose between his country and family and them, so the jury's still out.
Yeah. Wendy says Harry is like a partner who cheats on you. You might still love them, but you can't.
But the trust
and
is
should
gone.
not trust them
trust
ever
is
again.
gone. Life's too short. I just think forgive and forget.
You're very good, Christian woman.
Harry, forgive and forget, or
I agree with Steph, actually. I think you have to allow his standing as, he's the king's son. And, families fall out all the time. I had periods in my life where I didn't speak to brothers and family and everything, but things move on, don't they? Are we going to keep this situation terminal forevermore? There has to be some flexibility built in, I think.
Well,
blood is thicker than water.
Yeah, blood is thicker than water. Watch this space. We might see Harry back in the fold. Well, Aidan, Stephanie, really good
for having us
this morning. Quality time with you. Very, very good. And that's it from us, isn't it?
It is, so stay tuned, because Esther and Phil are here with Saturday Morning Live right after this.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Dan Stroud, and this is your latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. So this weekend, it's a weekend of sunny spells and blustery showers, all courtesy of this area of low pressure to the west. And that will be driving in bands of showers in off of the west during the course of Saturday. And some of these showers become locally heavy and potentially thundery in places. Further to the south and east, staying largely dry with some sunny spells. Temperatures generally fairly reasonable for the time of year, about average for mid-August, with highs of 23 or 22 across the south and east. A little bit chillier further north and west. So those showers continue.